Good morning and a warm welcome to all of you who have taken time to join us today in person or virtually. It is indeed an honor to have the esteemed presence of the Finance Minister of Kerala, Sri K.N. Balagopal. A warm welcome to the Honorable Minister and all our distinguished panel members. At CDS, we are deeply committed to providing meaningful policy inputs to all arms of government, central government, state government, and also local level government. These inputs are grounded on evidence based on rigorous empirical research, and over the years, we have the privilege of contributing to various policy areas. And today's workshop marks another crucial step in that journey. And the topic of today's workshop, fiscal decentralization, is very important at the current juncture. And our aim is not to the policy making in the country and also at the state level. And thank you all for being part of this important dialogue. Now I request Professor Sudipto Mandal to chair the session.
Honorable Finance Minister Sri Balagopal, distinguished panelists, distinguished guests, members of the faculty, and our dear students. Let me begin by welcoming all of you, a very warm welcome to all of you. I join Veeramani in receiving you here this morning. I would particularly like to welcome the Finance Minister because I believe this is your first visit here as a Finance Minister. However, your family has a very long association with the CDS. Professor Harilal had a long stint here, and he was, when he retired last year, the senior most professor. And I hope this is going to be the first of many visits that will follow. I'm not going to say very much about the subject matter of a discussion. It's very timely, and I'm especially happy that the Honorable Minister has come at this time, at a very crucial stage when we are just beginning consultations about the 16th Finance Commission. We have a presentation that will follow, so I'm not going to take much time on that. And let me not waste more time. So let me welcome the Honorable Minister to make his address.
Respected Chairman, Professor Sudipto, Sri Veeramani, Director CDS, our Finance Secretary Sri Ravindra Kumar Agarwal, Sri K.M. Chandrasekhar, other all academic, very important academic personalities are here. I'm not naming any one of them because all of them are there, and the students are also doing their serious work, so they are much academic like all others. So this is a workshop which basically started as a preliminary roundtable discussion, I think, because we had some meeting initially in gift director is here, and Dr. K.M. Chandrasekhar, Dr. Pinaki was very much there. We had some discussion earlier. Dr. Uman sir was also there. So the question of TOR what are the important aspects which we have to discuss at the time of the preparation of the document for the 16th Finance Commission, considering the experiences which we had earlier. That is very important. And when we have to discuss it from the side of Kerala, we have to emphasize what are the major ingredients, what are the major issues we have to raise. So I'm not taking much of the time, even some 20 minutes it was told, but I have to, I think I can limit it and I have to hear the discussions here. See, basically what happens, CDS, I know when chair said that as the minister, this is the first visit, but from my student days onwards, I used to come here, stay here. Dr. Joseph was there, my brother was there, stay in the hostel also. Those days, from when I was a student in MG College for MGO, I used to come here. So the association and respect about the institution is very much there, about the activities which we are doing. And we are trying to extend maximum help to the academic activities of CDS. So I think this initiative by CDS will be a very fruitful thing for the preparation of our memorandum, our findings, everything. See, the last Finance Commission, when it came to the final result of the last Finance Commission, I can start from that. Considering the earlier Finance Commissions, there was a sharp decrease in the divisive pool or whatever the money, the fund which is going to Kerala, coming to Kerala. Always we were saying, even the common villagers knows that at the time of Finance Commission, 10 Finance Commission, it was 3.9% of the total divisive pool, and now it came to 1.9. 50% reduction is there. Based on the criteria, calculation, everything is there. But just before this, it was 2.5%. If it was 2.5%, this time we would have got more than 8,000, 9,000 crores per year. That is the difference. So the criteria which was selected, decided by the earlier Finance Commission, last Finance Commission, there was a very, very important change which happened is the basic population criteria. It is 1971 earlier and came to 2011 now, which of course is creating some other confusion and doubts in the mind of the people that even this is a criteria, and then how the parliament seats and how this new kind of assessment will affect the delimitation in the coming years. That is also there. So at the time of 1971, because of the population control, states got an assurance. Dr. K.M. Chandrasekhar സാറിന് കൂടുതൽ പറയാൻ പറ്റും, കാരണം he was there in the bureaucracy from that time onwards. 1971, the understanding was the states will control, but it should not be, the population should not be a criteria after that for giving the benefits to the states. That is a basic major thing which affected the entire calculation. That is what I feel. See, and if every statistics is there, how the state is affected from all these aspects. So actually it is from the articles the academic articles I also noted that basically the union government is getting 64% of the total revenue of the country, and state governments have to spend around 63-64% of the total expenditure. So this is the basic, this problem is there. So how the income goes and how the spending, who are responsible. So this is there. And just after the GST introduction, around 54%, maybe points or numbers may differ from my memory, I'm saying around 54% of the states, 54 or 58% of the state revenue under the sale tax also left for GST regime, and 28% of the union government's tax rights also given to the GST. So this disparity is there. So after that, now the states' hands are tied. Hands are tied. The states are thrown into water and asking that you have to swim and go further and further. But your hands are tied. Legs already it was tied earlier. and after GST, this is the situation. So this is a real picture of almost all states. It's not a question of Kerala alone. Kerala's issue may be something more serious. So because of this, now the subject is generally based on fiscal decentralization. Kerala is compelled to go to the Supreme Court, and Kerala's original suit in the Supreme Court related to the one is borrowing power, borrowing rights. Basically, in the original suit, a lot of things, including the devolution, the decrease in the revenue which is given to state, everything is there. So Kerala is the first state which is compelled to go to the Honorable Supreme Court to argue for the rights of the states. This is a very serious turning point in the fiscal relationship in the country. These are not a small thing. Lot of articles are coming, national, international articles are coming, economists are writing, economic publications are coming. So after Kerala, other states are also now going. Tamil Nadu is planning, Karnataka is planning, Telangana is planning. So states are having their own problem. Bengal already told about this thing. So it is not a genuine distribution is not happening. That is what is there. So now the argument which raised by Kerala is also accepted by the Union, the Honorable Supreme Court. That is why Supreme Court said, even though the balance of convenience is there in favor of this central government, naturally union government, many points they are saying, and they have to control according to constitution, everything. But they said the issue is to be discussed in detail by a constitutional bench, constitutional bench, 5-member judge bench they proposed. So issue is very seriously in the in front of the people of the country. So I can give 2-3 examples which you may be knowing better. How the income, how from the total revenue of the states, how the decrease is happening. One example is about the total revenue receipts of Kerala and how much Kerala alone making and how much union was giving. In 2020-21, around 56% of the total revenue receipts was by state's own revenue or state's collection. That means the balance 44% by the union. Okay. Now, this 56% was increased in 21-22 as 59. That 59% state's own. That means 41 only union government in 21-22. And in 22-23, state's share is 66%. So sharp decline again by the union side. And in 23-24, it is expected that 74%. Now the final account is coming, 74%. And so this is happening. And now around 25% is coming to Kerala from the union funding or grant or whatever it is. And when you look into the details, see, according to the report of the state finances by RBI, the latest report, this share of Kerala's own tax to its total tax revenue is 79% during 21-23. Only 21% is contributed by the center, but this is not the case when we take the case of some of other states. For Bihar, it is 71%. We are getting 21%. For Bihar, I'm not comparing in that way, but fact I have to say, which is from the Reserve Bank report. Bihar, it is 71%, the center's contribution. Kerala is getting 21%. Odisha is 46%. Madhya Pradesh is 49%. I think UP is around 46%. So it's very, very, very clear that this kind of disparity is there. And cutting the divisive pool, it is already there. So this percentage is coming down. And when you are, 41% is the devolution now. Accepted principle is 41%. Some report based on INRA report revealed by Union government, Indian Express daily published it. They are saying that it is not 42 or 41%. Actually, only 33 to 41% is coming actually from the devolution to the states. Then revenue collection by the union government. This is another area which we already spoke very many times, and in the parliament also it was a very serious discussion. The cess collected, surcharges and cess collected by the union government. For example, I can say there was a big issue when we decided that 2 rupees cess last year for social security activities, for supporting social security cess. Lot of agitation, everything. But at that time, I said that already more than 10 rupees, union government, 10 to 20 rupees at that time, union government was collecting. A huge amount they used to collect. So, this is cess and surcharges which they are collecting under Article 270 and 271 of the Constitution. It is also increasing. That way, as per the report, union government from 2016 to 17, 2016-17 to 21-22, around 15.34 lakh crores was collected. And it is according to Dr. Sudeep Mandels and Sahu, that EPW article we quoted there, even in the meeting with the Union Finance Minister and in the GST Council. These are the things we quoted this article, EPW article. So this is going up like that. So on an average around 5 lakh crores, they are collecting as cess and surcharge, which would have been given to the state every year. So if 5 lakh is going to the general pool, what we will get? If it is 3.9%, we will get that percentage. If it is less than 2%, then also 10,000 crores every year, if it is coming to the divisive pool, or accordingly whatever the share is. So cess and surcharges are not going to the general pool, and cess and surcharges is not, there's no compulsion that it is to be divided. This is the issue. So centrally sponsored schemes also we have our own issues that I think we have to discuss, because their funding is mainly for the making toilets or these kind of basic amenities and facilities, which and basic schools, hospitals. We don't need those things. So you have all these capacities. So we will give you some support only after the others are coming up to the level of you. That is what they are saying. So this is not practical. We have second generation or more than that. I cannot say that second generation and the other generation, I don't know. Even the issues are not second generation. It is more than that. So we achieved many of the targets and points, so we are not getting. So this is very important. And in the area of borrowing also, it is not necessary to say many things. But borrowing issue now, we went to the court that borrowing space is there, it is not given. But basic issue is not about borrowing alone. Some newspapers are saying that Kerala wanted to get more and borrowing. We are not interested to borrow much. Actually, we have to get the eligible percentage from the divisible pool of the country. From the earlier statistics, you can easily understand that more than 25,000 to 30,000 from the pool we are eligible. It is not coming. If we are getting 20,000 crores more, the need for borrowing is very less. So that is there, and we are successfully improved our revenue generation also. So it is not a question of borrowing alone, but in the case of borrowing, and the statistics says that when we are taking around 3.9%, the gap is 3.9%. The central government it is 6.4%, because basically students know this better than us. So this is the disparity. So at this situation, when we have to discuss about all these things, what are the things we have to raise before the Finance Commission, that we have to prepare now? Many things are there. Main 2-3 points, I think, like many other things, I think some Kerala specific issues we have to raise. See, what are the earlier experiences? That then generally we know what is the earlier Finance Commission, what are the drawbacks there, what are the changes we have to make. We should not be penalized because of the development. Because Kerala got all these things. For example, I can say, out of the total salary in Kerala, government salary, how much we are paying for education, you know? 49%. 49%. Out of that, higher education gets less. 49%, and the total schools, if you take the number of total schools, it is 13,500 schools. The next state, which is comparable with the population and income, maybe you can take it as Telangana. Telangana is having a good number of schools. It is only 6,500. So if you take any area, this kind of difference is there. So what we achieved, we should not be penalized. That should be there. And Kerala, because of this development, for the next generation development also, center have to give some special funds for technological development, knowledge economy, technology. You have to give some money from the, now planning commission is not there. They have to give some money for these areas, because the next generation development, knowledge economy, robotics or AI or whatever the latest technology, genetics or whatever it is, space science. So there should be some special specific allotment for those areas also. So then population, I already said that 1971 should be a base, because it is a commitment, it was a commitment at that time. And local level special issues also we have to take. Population should not be a criteria. Kerala special other areas we have to take. And while looking into the total demography, Kerala's old age people, see, our geriatric issue is very serious now. Only 1 or 2 states may have that. On an average, India is having 7%, is more than, I think 7% is the old age population, above 60, 65. And what is our percentage? It is 17%. And we are going to reach around 20% within a short while. That means because of our health condition, because of our living standard, the age is going up. Longevity of life is there. So we have to give special care to that area. It's very important area, which generally this TOR is not coming and taking into it. Then another area, we have to say that the environment for the total India's greenery, environment, climate, we are doing a lot of things. We have to, now the man-animal conflict, why it is happening? Why it is compared to other states more? Because we are trying to protect these areas, and even our estates are also is part of the forest. So that area, I don't know how we can focus that. We have to focus this climate and environment for. Then seaside issues. Recently, every seashore is faced by the aggressive sea erosion. Now Trivandrum to other areas. You are reading, every places houses are going. There was a warning not to go to the seashore because it's very difficult, very dangerous these days. So that area we have to look into, and there also some special kind of things we have to look. Then cost of delivering services is very, very important. See, when they are suggesting a plan or giving some money, take the cost of labor and other services here. What is the average minimum, practically, what is the minimum labor cost here in Kerala and in other states? In some areas it is 3 times costly here. We cannot reduce that. So that is very important. That also we have to keep in mind. And in the area of land, when union government is planning for some new schemes, cost of land is very important. Recently, one of our argument in the court and before the union government is the cost we are spending for the development of national highway. Single example about these kind of things, that single issue I can raise, I can show it before you. For national highway, we are giving 25% of the land acquisition cost in Kerala. Why? Now, NHAI is saying that, union government is saying that land is very costly here, so we cannot acquire the land and you have to give some amount. And for finishing that thing, it's a toll road, you know. It's a toll road. All the road is coming as toll road. We are compelled to give 25% of the land acquisition cost. Or NH 66, that Kasargod Parasala road. That alone, we have to pay 6,500 crores. That is the extra 25% we are giving. So land cost is very huge in Kerala because of our lack of availability of enough land and population. So this is a thing when calculating about the money which is going to the percentage which is going to the states. And the local bodies which how we are spending, that also, So these areas we have to give some special emphasis, and other areas related to the our Pravasi, NRK, these also we have to a lot of study. CDS used to do earlier, also now also you are doing. So these are some areas where Kerala specific issues is there. So we have to raise this issue. And if you take the total percentage of grant which we used to get at the time of 15th Finance Commission, initially we got some revenue deficit grant. That revenue deficit grant is only for pacifying or managing the issues, because there was a sharp decline in the percentage. Now, after 2-3 years, it is totally finished. First year of this government, we used to get around 30,000 crores as this special grant. Now, total grant, I'm saying only it is coming to 10,000 crores. And if you take revenue deficit grant, 19,000 crores we were getting at the first year. This year, this financial year, we are getting 0. Nothing is there. So the 19,000 which is for balancing the decrease in the revenue divisible pool, that coming down, and naturally the income side is not going up. So these are the issues. So this is an issue of Kerala, and like other states which is developed like this, they are also facing this issue. The last Finance Commission, Kerala was hurt in a very serious way. Chandrasekhar sir was the earlier associated with the earlier Finance Commission also. Last year, 2 states were there, Karnataka and Kerala, they were saying. Karnataka some other issue. And the population with the same or less than Kerala is getting double than Kerala's share. That is also there. So it should be for strengthening the cooperative federalism. It should be for strengthening the relation between center and state. So center-state relationship should be strengthened only on the basis of the distribution and equal rights for every state. That is very important. That we have to prepare. We have to let them think about those lines, and the people who are attending this meeting. Very important personalities. Generally, they are dealing with all these activities. They have a say with these people. So we have to raise this issue, and this kind of discussions in other areas also will be helpful. That is what I think. So I'm very happy to be here with you. And I think this first meeting will create a lot of good suggestions and points. Thank you. Phone.
Cell phone. Thank you, Honorable Finance Minister, for a very comprehensive coverage of all the key issues in a very short time. I think after this, much of what will be discussed will be, in a sense, going back to issues that you have already posed. Just one point I wanted to mention, picking up from what you ended with, this whole idea of cooperative federalism. Certainly in your discussion with the Finance Commission and in your submission to them, you will cover issues regarding Kerala. But I do hope you will go beyond that to address issues of the country as a whole. Because India is a union of states. And what the union decides is as much, of course, the union will decide, but they should be discussed by all the states also. Just as they give views on your affairs or the state's affairs, you should have views on what the union government is doing and national policies and so on. I think the one institution we have, I've always said, which is a very good example of cooperative federalism, is the GST Council, of which you are a member. I mean, there may be room for improvement there also, but we don't have any other institution like that. But this platform of the Finance Commission, now the 16th Finance Commission, can be used for the states to also voice their views on the policies of the central government. Because of course, the decision-making authority will be theirs. Now, there is a, as I said, a very long list of, domain expert speakers today. And my regret is that because of the shortage of time, we will not be able to do justice to much that they would have to say. We also have a few persons joining us online. Professor Hasib Drabu, who was in fact finance minister of Jammu and Kashmir, played a very significant role in the GST Council and in other. There are also Professor Abhay Pete who is joining us online and others. So without further ado, let me now invite Professor Parmeshwaran to make his presentation.
Yeah, good morning. My task objective is essentially to have to map out what is the recent developments in center-state financial developments in India and what are the issues emerging from this. So it is designed essentially as a input into the discussion that follows. So in our constitution, it is designed, the federal system is designed in such a way that center has more taxation power and state has expenditure responsibility. So the constitution also provides for finance commission mechanism to equalize the what is called the fiscal capacity of the center and states in such a way that they can meet their mandated expenditures. And usually the Finance Commission does this task is by keeping the principles of equity and efficiency and overall macroeconomic stability of the economy. And here, and Finance Commission is usually appointed for 5 years to make recommendations for how to divide the central tax revenue between the state and center as well as among states. In these things, the most difficult task for the it's a difficult task in India because Finance Commission also has to forecast the macroeconomic scenario of the country for the next 5 years. That is the one difficulty. The other, I think this more fundamental difficulty, there are two reasons that causes that is equalizing the expenditure or fiscal capacity across states. One issue in that India is the high disparity in economic development across states. For instance, if you consider Goa and the richer state and Bihar, Goa's was 10 times richer than Bihar and 6.5 times richer than UP. And we exclude Goa as a small state. So you consider next major state, Haryana. Still, Haryana is richer than Bihar by 5.3 times and UP by 3.5 times. This is something peculiar to India compared to other federations. For Australia, the ratio of the richest to poorest province is only 1.4, and Canada, US, and Brazil, it is 1.6, 2, and 2.5. This huge, large disparity in per capita income across states also reflected in the disparity in development as well as in their fiscal capacity. If there is a disparity, we don't have any problem if we have enough resources to bridge that gap. But compared to India, our resource mobilization is also very relatively lower. For example, that this is the general government revenue as a percentage of GDP. In India, it is relatively lower compared to all other countries or regions. And it is not only lower, it is also stagnating for the last 11 years or so. So it means that fiscal equalization is not difficult, but is impossible in Indian contexts. So in that context, what I will do is that I will look at the first issues related to vertical devolution and then raise some of the issues which we can discuss in the coming when we start discussion on these issues. Now coming to the trend in the fiscal devolution in India between center and states. By constitution, the center is bound to share its no, there's one where to this thing. Okay, yeah. Yeah, this is fiscal transfers percent of next net tax revenue. The center is bound to share its net tax revenue with the states, and that usually the devolution takes either through tax or to the grants in aid. These are the 13th, 14th, and 15th. 15th we have this for last 4 years, and for 23-24 it is the revised estimate. Now, what you can see is that especially the 14th and 15th is comparable because they are both finance commissions recommended around 42% of the divisible pool to the states. And that is why it is the average increase from 28 to 35. But one thing is that the tax devolution, the average tax devolution during the 15th Finance Commission declined to 32%. There is a 3 percentage point decline in the tax devolution. And it is because important because tax devolution is done through formula based and it is also untied, and also states can make long run planning. And this grants in aid is also is almost stable, and there is a structure compositional shift in that grants in aid. Earlier it was planned grant and non-planned grant. Now from 2015 and 16 onwards there was no planned grant share is lower, and it is largely it take the centrally sponsored schemes. It's not moving. Yeah, one of the reasons for the decline in the average tax devolution from 35% in the 14th Finance Commission to 32% in the 50th is the shrinking size of the divisible pool. The divisible pool, for example, this is the divisible pool as a percent of the gross tax receipt of the center, and I also put the total receipt as a percentage of the total receipts. In 2012, during this period, there is a 12 percentage point decline in the divisible pool. And this is here, divisible pool gross tax revenue minus tax collection cost plus cess minus cess. But I have not subtracted surcharge because ready data is not available because we have to go to the each tax set, and then in 2017, 18, 19, surcharge comes to around 5% of the gross tax revenue. So the divisible pool can be is just lower than by 5 percentage point. So there is a decline in the divisible pool. Now coming to the composition of the fiscal transfer, what you can see is that during the 14th Finance Commission, 64% of the devolution on average happened through the tax and 36% through grants in aid. And for the first 4 years of the 15th Finance Commission, it is reduced to 61, and the grants in the share of the grants increased to 39%. And from 2015-16 onwards, we also have details on the composition of the what is called grants. What you can see is that grants in aid, which mainly consist of Finance Commission grants and other grants, its share declined from 9.6% in the 14th to 8.3%. What increased is a 4 percentage point increase in the grants through centrally sponsored schemes. And also the tax devolution also declined. Now this is something because a sound fiscal federalism requires more tax devolution as it is formula-based, untied, and predictable. That is now coming to the increasing share of the CSS in the present form is not desirable because given the large disparity in the level of development and geographical features among states, states' priorities and constraints vary a lot. And hence, one size fits for all approach results in waste of scarce resources. The second thing is that above all, this is against the idea of decentralized governance. The underlying principle of federalism is that if there is no spillovers beyond the region and local government has more information about the problem, then it is efficient approach is to enable the local government to perform that task instead of the federal government. Then second thing is that the CSS also that require matching contributions from the state government. This put additional pressure on fiscal resources of the states. Unless the scheme is in their priority, fiscally weak states may not be able to utilize the grant given through the CSS. This is what you can see here is that just I plotted share of the CSS in the total expenditure of the state and their revenue deficit. This is for the year. This is for the year 21-22, and what you can see is that that is in general that is fiscally weak state have less absorption of the central CSS programs. Now coming to the horizontal distribution, I don't have many things. Only thing is 15th Finance Commission. Usually Finance Commission consider aspects like need, equity and performance, and they use various variables to capture these aspects, and the 15th Finance Commission used the population area for need, population area and forest ecology for need, and income distance as a for equity, and tax and fiscal efforts and demographic performance was a indicator for performance, and their corresponding weights are given there. And now here I don't have any more thing, but I want to raise some of the issues related to the fiscal that we have to discuss. One issue is that in a federation having great disparity in per capita income, what happens is, and also low resource mobilization, this higher weight for income usually create cause of concern. For the poorest state, though they get a larger share in the devolution, they will not get enough to reach the level of the average level. For instance, in 21-22, total expenditure of the Bihar after accounting for transfers as well as borrowing is just 31% of the Haryana. So even if that is the equalization is not happening, then another issue is that Indian states are richer states in India are not that rich to make a lot of sacrifices. So what happens is that the richer states, they get a lower share in the devolution. They struggle to provide services of quality required their level of income. So there are different solutions. This has been discussed, and one solution suggested is to reduce the weight for income distance. For example, recent Rangarajan and Srivastava, the Hindu article, they said that it reduce the weightage for income distance by 5 to 10 percentage point. But another option is to give grants for the Finance Commission can also give grants for particular purposes. So can consider giving grants or debt relief to other specific grants to those states occupying the upper end of the income distribution to ensure their fiscal capacity. Now, here, when we discuss this issue, we also need to consider how the CSS, which now accounts for around 30% of the devolution, which is also follows the principle of equity in a strict way, For instance, you can see is that this is the per capita per capita centrally sponsored scheme allocation, and this is what you can see is that the richer states are getting relatively lower under the CSS also, and poorer states are getting more. Only exception may be Goa. I don't know why they are getting lot. So this means that in tax devolution and as well as in the grants, that is this inbuilt what is called the equity principle of giving more to the poor states are there. So, this when we discuss the equity, we need to consider these aspects. Then the second issue regarding the is that this centrally sponsored scheme needs to be restructured in such a way that it should play a synergetic role in the development effort of all states by supplementing their resources. This requires an institutional mechanism in which states also have an equal say. For example, states have usually the union government fix the priorities. There are a lot of priorities, and let the state identify their issues in their priority and then go to the center for funding instead of fixing everything from the. So for this, earlier we have planning commission, but states can take their plans to planning commission and get money. Similar, we need that kind of institutional arrangement, because otherwise somebody sitting in that Delhi may not be able to know what is happening in different states. Then this is something we need to discuss. Another issue is that for 15th Finance Commission, state argued for 50% of the divisible pool. So because they as argued that declining relative size of the divisible pool. Second, with the introduction of the GST, individual states cannot calibrate their tax rates for additional resource mobilization. And they also argued that increasing expenditure related to health, education, all these things. So they argued for 50% of the divisible pool, but Finance Commission give only 42%, 41, because Jammu and Kashmir ceased to be a state by that time. Now, and we that already the union is transferring more than 55% of its total net tax revenue to the states. For the 14th Finance Commission, average 55% of the net tax revenue is transferred to state, and in the 15th Finance Commission, first 4 years, I think that is around 53%. So now the question is there what is the feasibility of enhancing the share to 50% of the divisible pool? This is another issue. Now, this is the last one, and this is regarding the local self-government. For a recent RBI report provides evidence for the effectiveness of local self-government in enhancing health, education, and other development in outcomes across Indian states. Because we know that local governments are in a good position to, compared to the other, that is federal or the state, local governments are in a good position to give primary health, elementary education, as well as can identify the vulnerable and poor sections in the society. And this is also an institution which they can also seek the cooperation of the community, but that we have seen during the COVID time. Local governments were effective in handling the situation at the ground level. So this is, but however, it is largely the responsibility of the state government to develop an effective local government system by devolving functions and functionaries. And they also need to create that institutional structure of a state finance commission, regular appointment, as well as a impartial state election commission, and conducting the elections on time. This kind of institutional responsibility the state has to provide. And when you look at the extent of decentralization in India, there is a lot of variation. Some states are good, some states are not doing well. So now question is, because this is an issue of efficiency of service provision, because if the local governments are good at providing services, then a state is doing that indicate that the service provision is efficient. So then the question is, the previous finance commissions, while allocating fund to the local self-government, they considered these aspects, but 15th Finance Commission considered only one condition, that is to avail that grant, that is local self-government has to submit their audited financial statements to the which is publicly available. Then they are eligible for getting the money. But I think we have to go beyond that. That is whether Finance Commission can consider the extent of decentralization in a state as a criteria for devolution, because that indicates the efficiency of service provision, and it also encourages the state to go for what is called a decentralization. Otherwise, because we have implemented for the last 30 years, this 73rd and 74th Amendment, still many states are not appointing their finance commissions regularly, and that delay is there. So these are some of the issues. It's only, I think we can discuss. I am stopping here. Thank you. I think I'm on time.
So, thank you very much for putting that very, again, comprehensive, but also evidence-based thing, which I thought was particularly to be appreciated. Now we have, as I said, a long list of real experts with a lot of domain expertise who can, tell us a lot, but we don't have enough time for them. I just want to start with Mr. Chandrasekhar. Chandrasekhar ji.
I think a lot of ground has already been covered in the presentations made by the minister and then Dr. Parameswaran. So I'm not going to go into too much of detail on exactly those issues. The major point, I think we are holding this meeting because the director has been called by the Finance Commission and he has to present certain views. I think that is the whole idea. Now, that I would suggest certain things according to that. Now, the first point is that we need to find out if there is going to be any significant change of approach. Because I saw an article in the Hindu by Dr. Panagaria, who is, of course, an ardent free market man who has his own philosophy of economics. There was an article recently where he talked in terms of not making that much distinction between the rich and the poor states, that the rich need not be discriminated against just because they have made progress. Now, how they're going to implement it, I'm not very sure. That is one thing which we need to look at. It could also mean that more will go to the center and less to the states. It could mean big changes in the parameters. It could mean approach to allocations for projects could change. Now, if you can understand what they are thinking of, that will be a great gain for the state. The second point I wanted to make out was that, as you know, and I think two or three people who were closely associated with the 14th Finance Commission are here today. They will be speaking. The percentage of devolution, the vertical devolution went up from 32 to 41%. But they know that this was only a compositional shift. 32% was already there. Then 14th Finance Commission had to deal both with the plan as well as non-plan because plan had gone. So that amount was added. That came to about 6%. That was the amount that went through the Sarkaria Commission to the states. That amount was added. So it became 38%. Then the 13th Finance Commission had about 200, project funding things. There were about plenty of them. But the 14th Finance Commission stuck to only 3. That was another 1.5%, 2%. So basically the increase was only 1%. So that 41%, is it coming to the states? This was a point made by the minister. This was a point, I think, also which Parameswaran made. One, of course, is the cesses and surcharges, which has gone up, so that the total allocation, total resources that the center is getting, 41% of that is not coming to the states. The second is the centrally sponsored schemes. Now, centrally sponsored schemes are all designed by the center. And these schemes are implemented in an inflexible manner. The states cannot do anything about it. Like I used to, I will not repeat it, Jal Jeevan program and so on, which cannot be implemented in Kerala. So even if you make money allocation to Kerala, you can't spend it. That is the problem with centrally sponsored schemes. There is no flexibility. It is all decided there in Delhi, and it is implemented in states. States have different areas, and we have no flexibility to change. Then, of course, there are things like GST delays in the allocation by the center. And of course, they have a large amount of money coming from the Reserve Bank of India and the central public sector undertakings, which again does not get devolved. These are the major changes. So I don't think 41% of what the center is getting is coming to the states presently. And the same problem arises in respect of horizontal devolution, according to which Kerala, I think, is expected to get 1.76%. Now, that again, I don't think the whole amount is coming to Kerala. And there are some factors which you need to look at, which were mentioned by the minister and which was mentioned by Parameswaran also. You see, in Kerala, you take population as an index, but along with population, Minister mentioned about the 1971 population in comparison with the 2011 population, which is a major factor for the sharp decline so far as Kerala is concerned. Now, in addition to that, I think we have a major problem of density of population. We have the highest density, and density means more problems, because density results in a whole range of city-oriented problems. Your waste management, your providing cities, roads, everything gets completely upset. So this is another point that you need to look at. And then the Human Development Index. Somehow we have got the notion that capital means only bricks and mortar. For us in Kerala, since 1956 onwards, we have been investing in human capital, whether it is health or education. Now, has it given a return to us? I think it has given a better return to us, because the return comes in the form of thousands of our people going outside. So when Panagaria says in his article that Kerala has the highest inequality in income, the highest figure of Gini coefficient, which is based on consumption expenditure, the fact is that the income is made outside and the expenditure takes place in Kerala. So if they have certain notions about the Gini coefficient, I think it is for the director to settle it. Now, one thing I would really, since the honorable minister is here, I would particularly emphasize. You see, we have been hearing a great deal during the last few years about double engine government, single engine government, double engine government being given a particular deal, single engine government being given a separate deal. Now, our case, in the Kerala case in the Supreme Court, is a strong case. Article 293 and I think it was, I wrote a couple of articles on this. One article I wrote and an interview was there with the Financial Express. Now, the fact is that Article 293 says that the borrowing, in my words, in my interpretation, it says that the borrowing capacity rests with the state. Now, that is again, bolstered by items in the state list and the central list under the 7th schedule, where central borrowing is in the central list, state borrowing is in the state list, and there is nothing in the concurrent list. So constitutionally, there is a strong case, but the Supreme Court bench instead of dealing with it, sent it to the five-judge bench. It might take years before it comes up. So we may not get much out of that particular thing. But it could lead to the Finance Commission being asked to look into it and to make recommendations, changing the constitution. If, as they say, the present government has 400 seats or whatever, in the next, they're in a strong position to enforce constitutional changes. If that happens, then there is a real danger for Kerala of being under certain amount of financial control from the center. I would not be surprised even if Article 360 is imposed. The Article 360 says that if a state is in a financial crisis, the center can take over the finances of the state. If center takes over the finances, it effectively means taking over the state. So that could also be implemented unless, I mean, that thing should also be kept in mind by the minister, by his government, and that might be a real issue. So I think many changes are there on the anvil. There is much thinking taking place, and the Finance Commission, the meeting with the Finance Commission will help the director gather some information which you can pass on to the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sri Chandrasekhar. Particularly, you alerted us to some, lurking red flag or lurking danger around the corner, and I'm sure that they will be taken in mind. Ms. Srinivasan, would you like to make a few remarks?
Good morning, Chair, Honorable Minister of Finance, K.M. Chandrasekhar Sir, Senthil Sir, Director of the Institute, Professor Chakravarti, other distinguished members participating in today's workshop, students. So this is my first visit to CDS and I was really awed by the beauty
Really
of the
welcome.
campus. It's a wonderful campus. 9 acres of campus with less than 100 students, about 25 faculties, and very green campus. So the first impression is very good. And having been in Kerala for 25 years, I've always heard a lot about this institute. Any intellectual discourse in Kerala is not complete without having a reference to CDS. So rightly so, the Finance Commission is also identified and recognized and asked CDS to come and present there as part of the technical discussion. And the mood and tenor of the Finance Commission to be judged has been very aptly elaborated by Chandrasekhar sir as to what is the intent of the commission. This is a very important time in the state's economic situation. We all know and heard a lot about the suit that has been filed before the Supreme Court of India, and sir has also briefly touched about it. In fact, during the hearing, a lot of references to the recommendations of 14th and 15th Finance Commission has also come up. And I'm sure the Finance Commission would also delve deep into what has transpired. And as a matter of strategy, that can also be a part of our point of view before before the Finance Commission also. So basically, one of the points that was raised is that Finance Commission is a constitutional body, which after having submitted its report, so an ATR is prepared by Government of India, whether the recommendation is accepted or not accepted, and then that ATR is presented to the President of India, and then it is laid in Parliament. And conventionally, Finance Commission, unlike many other constitutional bodies, the Finance Commission is one of those constitutional body whose recommendations has been by convention accepted in toto. So that being the case, a question arose as to does Finance Commission's recommendation or under the scheme of thing, is there any power to Government of India to suo moto do something which otherwise would be into the realm of Finance Commission? As was discussed with Sir also in a meeting convened by Honorable Minister some time back. So there is, a Finance Commission submits its report, and then for the next 5 years, there is no such body where states can go and say, look, Finance Commission actually meant this or that. There is no such body. Now there is a debate as to what should happen, whether it should go to GST Council or Interstate Council or National Development Council, or there should be a mechanism whereby the implementation of various recommendations of Finance Commission should be overseen by somebody. Now there is absolutely nobody. With the doing away of Planning Commission, now the Finance Ministry is the only body. And Finance Ministry has taken certain decisions which essentially Government of Kerala has taken before the Supreme Court as to Government of India cannot unilaterally do it, and then it has also interpreted Constitution in different matters. So that being the case, I think this particular Finance Commission, I'm sure, will go into the issue of borrowing, what kind of limitations that can be, brought into the borrowing limits and all that kind of thing. So as far as preparation of the state government is concerned, we have had 2-3 meetings earlier. We have constituted a 16 Finance Commission cell in the ministry. We are also in the process of constituting the memorandum drafting committee, as was done last time. We also identified 8-9 topics on which Kerala needs to deep dive into these topics. And besides, taking up issues on macro level, we have to go really micro level and generate evidences, data, and put up a point of view, which ultimately results in realization of our objective. Our objective is what? The kitty should increase, that is, divisible pool should increase, the vertical devolution percentage should increase, and within that percentage, our share should increase. Now, personally speaking, we have been talking about Bihar, Jharkhand, and all those so-called poor states. So in any discourse, if our approach is asking for more at the cost of a so-called poorer state, that may not be taken well, While poverty is something every single government would like to give more resources to the poor. That may be because of inefficiency, whatever may be the reason. As long as you have population criteria, you have area, you have demographic factor, which constitutes about 60-70% of the total. So to get out of the share of horizontal share the way we have got it may be difficult. And that is perhaps the reason we can also concentrate more onto the state-specific packages. We may concentrate on larger allocation of revenue deficit grant, because their overall framework, they will find it very difficult to change as per the needs of 1 or 2 states. As far as collaboration with the states are concerned, till you're talking about increasing the divisible pool, that's okay. Till you're talking about, vertical distribution, that's okay. But when it comes to horizontal share, there may not be too much of a traction between the states because they will be competing with each other. So these are the issues a lot of experts have pointed out. Basically, we are going to be very heavily dependent on institutions like CDS, and GIFT is also working. And I'm sure with the combined wisdom that is available in Kerala, we will be in a position to to come out with a memorandum which will do justice to the state. One small example of CSS, as has been talked about CSS. Now, as Sarah said, borrowing by the center, borrowing by the state is a different subject in 7th schedule. Even the areas are also defined. Now, if you see the centrally sponsored scheme, many of those schemes are in area which is squarely falling on the state list. So what is the need of too many central sector schemes? If it is under the remit of the state government, let the state government decide. Jal Jeevan Mission is a scheme which is creating havoc to the state finances. It is 50-50. And there is a tendency in the state, as in finance department, now I am in a better position to understand. So each of these departments in our state, they are vying with each other. The moment they get 100 crore, they will say 100 crore we have got, you please pay your 50 crore so that we get the next installment. Now there is a competition. And as a result, we keep on pumping whether the scheme is good or not. We do not kind of examine that. And just to get that central share, they are eating into the state share. And Jal Jeevan Mission has become such a mammoth scheme now. They are expecting about 10,000 crores of state share next year. When my total state share, total in the annual plan, the state plan excluding LSGD is 22,000 crores. Now, how is it possible out of 22,000 crore, 10,000 goes to water sector? That individual departments, they don't have that kind of bandwidth to understand this. This is creating a huge problem. In the name of centrally sponsored scheme, all these departments will come with some pittance money here and there, and they'll say state to participate in that. So these are some of the issues which we have to really think about. Finance Commission is also asking initial data on income and expenditure and the various priorities of the state government. Now, one thing we should also do, which we have done in the case of Supreme Court, when we talk about expenditure, we do not talk about the expenditure withheld. So if we have spent 1 lakh crore, there's another 50,000 crore that should have been spent, but we are not spending because of the resource crunch. So I think whenever we submit our expenditure details, we should also talk about some of the pressing expenditures which we could not do because of the resource unavailability. So that will kind of project our expenditure commitment in a right perspective. Generally, we just take the budget number, expenditure, because it does not tell the different story how much expenditure would not be made. So these are some of the few things that I thought I would point out. It's extremely difficult to speak after Chandrasekhar sir has spoken and then Senthil sir is going to come. When I joined service, sir was Cabinet Secretary of India and Senthil sir was Expenditure Secretary of Kerala. So thank you for having organized this workshop. I'm sure it is the beginning of a long exercise, and I'm sure with all the brain sitting here, we will be in a position to put up a very strong case before the Finance Commission, and Kerala will be in a position to extract what is due to us, definitely. Because I saw the numbers from 14 Finance Commission to 15 Finance Commission. I think the reduction in horizontal share was maximum in case of Karnataka, and number 2 was Kerala. So this is the sharpest fall that was witnessed. And if we were to see the absolute number over a period of 5 years, it is a huge number for a state like Kerala. Thank you. Thank you for giving.
Thank you very much, Well, you have shared with us the problem that you are grappling with on a day-to-day basis as Principal Finance Secretary. But there's one thing you underline, which is really very, very important now. And that is about the peculiar nature of the tenure of finance commissions. You know, Finance Commission gives its award and then it's gone. It's dead from the next day. And that leaves window open for all kinds of, if I may use a strong word, distortions to come into the awards. But there is nobody to oversee this. The GST Council is beyond its remit. I forgot to mention there is the Interstate Council, which is supposed to be a cooperative federal body, but the way it has been implemented, a small unit under the Home Ministry, and almost typically it's almost like a punishment posting to be made in charge of that. So it is basically it's hardly ever meets. It's not really an effective body. So in this vacuum, the center gets away doing a lot of things which are actually not the intention of Finance Commission. So you've raised a very key point. Before I come back to the other many experts within the room, I thought we would first go to those who have been waiting online. If that's okay, I do that. Hasib, can you hear us?
Yeah, Shilpa, I can hear you very clearly. Yeah.
Okay. So if I can invite you to take the floor and share your comments with us, Hasib, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Shilpa. I'd like to start by actually remembering.
Just by one way of introduction, those who don't know, Mr. Hasib, Dr. Hasib Dabu was part of the CDS alumni and was later a very distinguished finance minister of GNK. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Shilpa, sorry. No, I just thought I would kind of recall my time in CDS when the federal issue, the foundations of federal thinking, federal fiscal thinking in CDS at least, with ISG and KK George. And another 40 years later, we still hear the same issues. I don't know if it's the foresight of ISG and KKG, or is it the stagnation of thinking within the academia about the issues in the Finance Commission. But I'd like to start off from something you said about states being also concerned about the country as a whole. I think in this Finance Commission, the context is far more important than the contents of the commission that eventually will come out. This commission is being set in very, very peculiar situations, and also in terms of what is happening around us, not just in federal fiscal policy, but in macroeconomic policy. So if I were to look at the Indian federal system, it walks on two legs, really. One is revenue, and the other is representation. The revenue part is what we have to look at, the fiscal aspect, revenue sharing, but the political leverage of individual states comes up with representation of states in the parliament. And during the operative period of the 16th Finance Commission, the Delimitation Commission is most likely to be constituted. Now, this gives a very different overall context to the Finance Commission, how it should approach the issue of federalism in India. Because the interstate balance of power among states definitely has been stirred through whatever has happened in the past. But it will get shaken for sure with the recommendations of these two commissions, the Delimitation Commission as well as the Finance Commission. So in that sense, the political economy of federalism is in for a major reset. And it is time that states do recognize this, and in their discussions, the overall thing should be discussed. So this backdrop of the churn in the power, the political economy of federalism should provide the larger context for the recommendation of the Finance Commission. And no state, and this is where the southern states apprehend, should get a double whammy of reduced resources and reduced representation. And in all likelihood, it does appear that the southern states will get the double whammy of lower representation and lower revenues, because the number that decides either is population. So the approach, the second now, this is the larger context. I'll be very brief because I have just 5 minutes. The approach, apart from the context, the approach of the Finance Commission should be based on the jurisdictional separation of indirect taxes, which is prevalent since 2017. Earlier, you see, so the jurisdictional separation, which was prevalent until 17, has now changed, and we have post GST the concurrence of indirect taxes. Neither the 15th Commission nor even the 14th could have actually taken cognizance of it, but certainly the 15th Commission did not do what it ought to have done by recognizing this major shift in the part. The second point being the operative part recommendations should be informed by the destination / consumption oriented tax regime now, which was early, which has replaced the origin or the production-based tax regime. This makes a huge difference to interstate distribution. Kerala, for instance, a consumption state, should technically benefit from such a move. Also in light of the changes that have happened, particularly in GST, the criteria for devolution and the consideration for distribution of grants must also be recalibrated. You cannot run the same set of criteria that you were running so far in a different regime now. So while population is the overwhelming criteria, it might be prudent and progressive as well to carve out a subset of population in terms of the quality of population, a quantitative assessment of the demographic dividend in each state. And as was mentioned here, just the earlier speaker, in terms of I think Mr. Chandrasekhar mentioned, in terms of the density of population. So why not utilize some part of the overall weightage of population to bring in an element of the qualitative aspects of population, which would benefit progressive states like Kerala, Karnataka, who have done well in population control. I don't know if it's possible to stick to 1971 because that raises genuine issues that you cannot ignore populations that do exist in states. But it should not become a moral hazard, and states who have done well to control population should not be the losers. So to kind of merge the two, what I would recommend is to look at the qualitative aspect of population than just the overall number. In the era of urbanization, another big point which I did expect to hear from Kerala particularly is the devolution to panchayats. My own suggestion would be that while resources should be devolved to panchayats, the center should not do so directly, bypassing the states. That's a huge thing. They may earmark the thing, give it to states, then the state finance commissions can allocate it, distribute it, or it just passes through, but it should not go outside the consolidated fund of the state, which it is doing right now, because that impairs the efficacy of the expenditure and also undermines the authority of the state government. What is happening is you're creating these urban bodies and panchayats by directly dealing with them from center, bypassing the state, thereby weakening the second tier of governance, which I think is the most critical thing for the federal thing. And finally, income has traditionally been used as the second most influential variable in the interstate distribution of revenues. How about looking at, in terms of consumption as a criteria, splitting the income weights into consumption and because now you're seeing a whole range of disparities coming between income and consumption, then you will see some of these variables would have an impact of how it is distributed. And finally, one thing which again, by way of a conclusion, would be that states also need to assert their own authority. I mean, it's all right going to the Supreme Court. I think it's a defining moment, not the most desirable situation. But I remember in COVID times, there was a conference where I think the finance minister of Kerala at that time, Isaac, was there. And there was this huge hue and cry about center not reducing GST on essentials and medical supplies. What prevented a state like Kerala to reduce its part of SGST on those medical things? There has to be a proactive approach of states in doing certain things, which today is being hidden under this thing that under GST we can't do anything. We can't do rate calibrations, we can't do rate changes. The same applied in VAT as well, when you had rate bans. So it's nothing new that has happened because of GST. But the point really being that states must also know the power of their own policy positions rather than leave everything to center and not be proactive about it. That's about it by way of for initial comments. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Hasib. I'm very tempted to comment on some of the very interesting points you raised, but I will not because we don't have time for that. Some of it will come up during discussions. So if I may proceed to, Mr. Srinivasan, are you there? Mr.
Thank you.
Srinivasan?
Yes, yes, I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. The floor
Thank
is
you
yours.
very much.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. I just make only one point very briefly. After the first Finance Commission, this is the only Finance Commission which had a terms of reference directly from the Constitution. And since the second Finance Commission, all of us know
I'll go to the next.
that the Union government would always increase a very long list of terms of reference under the title any other matter referred by the Union government. So many of these things in the terms of reference since the second Finance Commission influenced the Finance Commission to decide one on the horizontal distribution of the state share in the center's revenue, as well as in deciding the grants and aid. If we see the terms of reference since the second to about ninth or 10th Finance Commissions, they have almost stabilized the view that equity should be prioritized over efficiency in the distribution fund. All these things have happened because of the additional terms of reference that the Union government has given to the successive Finance Commission. And since 2000, we have had similar terms of reference on deciding issues relating to the public debt of the states. And that has also matured with the 15th Finance Commission recommendations on the fiscal responsibility legislations that the states have to do. So now the 16th Finance Commission is very peculiar because it doesn't have any additional terms of reference under the title any other item referred by the Union. So this gives, I think, a scope for the political intervention by the states. I visualize three different scenarios. One, the Union government would not have given the additional terms of reference because I think among the terms of reference we have had for the 15 Finance Commissions till now, the 15th has the largest and the longest terms of reference. So strangely, the 16th Finance Commission did not have such a long terms of reference from the same Union government. It could be because they didn't want the terms of reference to be a point of discussion in the election. But I think this itself gives scope for the states to discuss this particular terms of reference in the times of election. Secondly, I also visualize that there is a possibility for additional terms of reference could be given by the new Union government that may come into power post-June. So in that case, we'll have to discuss what are the additional terms of reference that the Union government could give. A third possibility could be where the Union government could unofficially influence the Finance Commission to decide on certain issues. So all these things are possible in a democratic setting. And that is why I insist that the states should create a new scope for political discussion around the terms of reference. One, it has to make the Finance Commission to be more transparent. Initially, the Finance Commission should be influenced to come out with an approach paper on various issues that are there, which the Finance Commission considers apart from the distribution of taxes as well as distribution of grants, but also the principles in which these things have to be done and what is its approach relating to debt of both union and the state governments. Secondly, the transparency also should be in terms of the issues that have been raised by the states before the Finance Commission. We come to know about all these things only after the Finance Commission presents the report, and that too very briefly. So unless this broader federal discussion happens around the large gap that the terms of reference has given us, which I consider as a larger scope and also an opportunity for the states to discuss the entire range of fiscal federal issues among themselves as well as between the union and the state. If this could be taken very sincerely, I hope that the recommendations will also be as binding as one would expect that to be. Many people, we all believe that the union government accepts many of the recommendations of the Finance Commission. the very fact that it is not being justiciable. Normally, the union government accepts only the recommendations relating to the distribution of union taxes as well as in the grants in aid. And all the ATRs on the various finance commissions we have seen, on all other matters, they would say we will discuss that over a period of time. And that's how other recommendations take a backseat and they are being changed as the union government wants that to be. So I find that one simple point, all the states have now to politically raise this issue of the terms of reference and how the Finance Commission should be more transparent in dealing as a neutral body between the union and the states. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Srinivasan. I do hope that the special neighboring states like Tamil Nadu and Kerala can cooperate on this issue that you have been focusing on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pete Jan, no? Okay. So, Pete is not, he hasn't joined us, so please go ahead. Huh? No, he also not there.
Given the time limit, I would like to restrict myself to few talking points which would be considered, which we are actually would be, some of them we are actually facing now and will be facing in future, and some of them are our own doing. So we can't escape from our own, this concern which we are given silently for some of the issues in which erosion has taken place over the period. Now, there are 2 points. One is that what was mentioned earlier, we can expect an additional terms of reference to the commission since the clause D of 280 is not reflected. Now, if it is deliberate, then it could actually reshape the whole approach of the Finance Commission in terms of the mandate given to them, because it is left to the president to accept or not accept any recommendations which is given by the commission other than strictly restricting Article 280 and 275. Now, if you are really looking at fiscal decentralization and the fiscal autonomy, in my view, there has been an erosion of both by the silent consent of the states. Now, the states should be much more vigilant, at least in the future. One, the GST and the GST councils in terms are that is now favorable to the center. When the GST was actually thought of or is being about to be implemented, there were a lot of concerns. In fact, the 14th Finance Commission did look at it, but we did not go beyond that because we stopped at that because it's a very contentious issue. So they could have actually waited for another 5 more years of that, then they could have looked at GST. They jumped in, and then having jumped in, they actually entrusted it to the central government, including the council. Number 2, now, when the commission gave the recommendations in the 14th commission, when the plan and non-plan has been removed, it was expected that there will not be any more centrally sponsored schemes. There was supposed to be a sunset at a point of time, because once the planning commission has gone, it was the planning commission which was doing CSS also. Now, it could not have been transferred to the independent ministries to decide their own scheme. And therefore, what was done initially was a kind of states chief ministers and others were asked to look at it in terms of consolidation. Now, they actually failed to exercise the opportunity given to them, saying that everything should have been reduced to a few number and all should have been only 100% if it wanted, in which case it would have been a centrally sponsored of 100%. Now, the government of India would have had only central sector schemes, which is their right. There they can exercise any discretion they want because it is their own scheme. But on a CSS, we should have stopped it. Instead, what we did, everybody agreed that there will be a core of the core optional. Now, optional, what has happened as a result of is the size is increasing in terms of aggregate, and then the state's contributory share is also increasing. And now we are now arguing, saying, no, we are put into difficulty. So this is the one where we have not actually had a forethought of committing anything with the center in terms of that. Now, the third one is we are talking about federal, what is called as cooperative federalism. Now, it was a 14th Finance Commission first introduced the concept into the paper itself, talked about the 14th cooperative federalism. Now, if the cooperative federalism has to function in the fiscal game, then there should be clear-cut rules of the fiscal federalism. Right now, there is no rules. We talk about fiscal federalism, we should do that, we should do that. But where is the clear rules for us to play this fiscal game? Now, what is happening is, in the absence of any rule, all are staked against the state governments. So this is the three things which we have done. And let me come to the last one before I come to the other side in terms of what needs to be done. Now, when the 12th Finance Commission made the recommendation for the government to disintermediate in terms of providing loans to the states, and all the loans outstanding as on 31st of March 2005 was consolidated, was to be repaid in 20 years. By 2025, the two states would have been out of Article 293, 3 and 4. And by 2030, remaining states would have been out. Now, this was actually raised by the Planning Commission, 12th Finance Commission, commented on it. We commissioned a study, and then we left it, saying that it is going to be by 2030. They will be looking into that. Now, as a result, what has happened is, if we have done nothing, by 2025, two states would have been out of Article 293 and 94. I mean 293 and 4, and by 2030, all states would have been out. Now, the 15th Finance Commission was asked to look into that. They did not do much. That's what I see from their report. Now, what happened was, Government of India took an ad hoc policy decision in 2001 and 2, saying that there will be a 50-year interest-free loans under the special scheme for capital investment. All states simply agreed to that. Now, as a result of it, what has happened? Till 2075, legally and technically, states are indebted to the Government of India, because under Article 293(3), you need a consent. It's not for borrowing limit. See, there is a way of looking at Article 293 and 4 in a different way. 293(3) only talks about consent, not fixing the borrowing. 294 says, while providing the consent, what conditions may be imposed by the this government. Now, as a result, what has happened is, as far as consent is there, unless the full bench decides in another way, till 2075, you are indebted to Government of India, and you will have to seek the consent of Government of India as it stands today. Now, we could have avoided that. What we could have told is, if you want us to do this capital investment for this 50 years, you allow us to take the loan, and since it is going to be a new interest free, you should have actually compensated us for the interest by way of grant from the government. In which case, what would happen is, on the Government of India, flows would have taken place as a grant on the revenue side, not on the capital, which would be treated as a loan. And for the state also, it would have been treated as a grant in terms of compensation for the interest to be paid, whereas the loan would have been taken by us from the open market. Anyhow, in this country, as long as you have a general government debt, whether the center borrows or state borrows, is the same. So, but we didn't do that. So now, this is the situation as of now. Now, what needs to be done with respect to this consent and Article 293? Now, this issue was expressed as a concern in the Constituent Assembly during the debate with respect to on this Article 293, 3 and 4. Assembly actually constituted, commissioned the experts group study to do that, committee. The committee went into that. And then committee considered whether we could have a ministerial conference or a loan council, like in the case of Australia. But the committee did not recommend such in the final recommendations, as it felt that coordination by RBI was sufficient for the purpose. So it didn't happen. Now, since we are now 75 years after the Constitution has been adopted, I think we should make a case for a loan council like in Australia, comprising of the Commonwealth of Australia, states, and the self-governing territories. That council, which is under the this Financial Agreement Act of 1924, that is why in the 47, when they are looking at it, they were looking at that 1924. That council was to coordinate the public sector borrowing for all. Now, we should ask for it, particularly in the context of the central FRBM having been amended in 1918, targets a general government debt of 60% of the GDP, in which they expect the center would be about 40 and the remaining 20 would be the state. Now, that's where we should actually look for, where there is a coordination, where you can discuss and you don't give a upper hand to the government of India to take executive action, but rather comes from a statutory independent council, which should actually look at the allocation of public sector borrowing for the center states, and particularly when we are all targeting for a 60% debt to GSDP. Now, what otherwise needs to be done at the state level, because we can always talk about what we have done. At the state level, we also need to see that we have to redesign the expenditure rationalization strategy and strengthen revenue intelligence and realization. We always have this, we always expect that we will do an expenditure rationalization. We have the midterm expenditure committee review coming up. But on the revenue realization and the revenue intelligence, we need to catch up a lot at the state level. Number two, we have to do both fiscal risk analysis at the central level, as well as both the entities should stress test their debt profile, because we only look at an aggregate debt but not a debt profile. Now, in this connection, I would like to just give a quote. It need not be mistaken, because I'm just giving a quote. This is from one of the most underrated presidents in the United States in 1839, Martin Van Buren. So actually, US had a crisis at that time. So he actually said, indebtedness cannot be lessened by borrowing more money, nor by changing the form of debt. Ultimately, debt is a debt. So you have a consolidation path, and you will also have how you are able to have it as a part of your, this investment and capital creation. Number two, the FRBM Act in the present form has some limitations. We have to accept that. Both the government of India and the state government have some limitations in the FRBM Act. So we need, therefore, there's a need for independent institutions that will bolster transparency and credibility among the public, investors, lenders on the budget estimates and the expenditure. Right now, everybody has a credibility issue. So there are some defects in the FRBM which needs to be looked into. And also, we must have a joint mechanism between the center, including the states, for monitoring and the compliance of the union government to its FRBM Act, either through an independent agency or a collective mechanism. Therefore, we should be in a position to actually monitor and see the compliance of Government of India with respect to its own commitment. If you have seen in the last 2 decades after the 12th Finance Commission, more correction has been at the state level on the revenue account. More, this commitment to the consolidation path has been at the state level and not at the central level. And that is why you will see that they have to use the escape clause, and then every commission has to come back right from 12th, 13th, 14th, say that the Government of India is actually larger. Now, when we are taking 30% of GSDP as a debt at the state level, if you are actually converting into the GDP basis, it will be only around 24 to 25. So as a GDP, all states, the debt put together will be much lower than their own commitment as a GSDP ratio at the state level. So nobody has ever looked at it and then used it as a bargain with the Government of India. Then, what I actually feel is, it has been a fad. Everybody has been talking about a grand bargain, right from the World Bank and others. Now we have to look for a real grand bargain with the center for a future consolidation path, in which both the parties will be committed to that, and not at the cost of one party. Now, this is with respect to this, the FRBM. Now, let me give a few thoughts on the devolution and what the state could make a presentation to the finance commissions. In my view, actually, we should get over the current fixation on comparing interstate share of horizontal devolution by one FC over its predecessor. Rather, we should look at and compare the share of the HD and the revenue deficit grants. And if that study, if that comparison is made by somebody, I'm sure that you will be in for surprises. B, we are now focusing more on HD transfer rather than looking at how much of the finance commission's recommended transfers percentage is actually going to us or it is coming. If you look at the HD transfer recommended by the 14th Finance Commission and what has been recommended by the 15th, the growth in the 15th is only 7%. Now, if you adjust for inflation, I will leave it to you to see what would have actually, what kind of comparison it can actually make between the 14th and 15th. Number two, if you look at the total transfers by the 15th, it was 80% of the total transfers recommended by the commission was for HD. Whereas if you look at the 14th, of the total transfers, 89% was under HD. Number three, we are actually, we have to actually tell the government, one way of increasing this is the states will have to combinedly and tell the finance commission, since the planning commission is not there, plan and non-plan has been done away with, there cannot be continuance of CSS and therefore there must be a sunset. And sunset within 2 years, and then all that central share of that CSS should be all wound up, and that should be included for the resources available to the states for devolution, so that on sunset of the CSS, the states will have the flexibility in designing their own program as a part of devolution funds coming, and the central government will have only the central sector schemes which they have the freedom to operate and expenditure in any way they want. Under the central sector scheme, they can discriminate among the states. We don't have to worry about it. But we should not be put into disadvantage under the CSS, where we are asked to choose a scheme which we don't want, and multiple way in which we are ultimately affected because you are not able to provide a match for our contribution. Last point, I will just leave it. I will address it on the devolution. One is, we must ask for two things. We must ask for two things. I don't think that changing the criteria of the 15th will make us any good. But rather, we should suggest to the 15th Commission to retain the same criteria, but change the weightages. I would like to suggest that the Finance Commission should be asked, for the purpose of incentivizing better performing states and rewarding them, the Commission should be asked to reduce the weight of income distance from 45 to 35. 2, increase the tax and tax efforts from 2.5 to 5. 3, increase the demographic performance from 12.5 to 20. This, I think we should consider for presenting it to the Government of India. Last 2 points which came up during the earlier comments, remarks given by colleagues here. One was with regard to the, what the Government of India could do if they were to give a 1-page or a 2-page additional terms of reference post the new government coming. But there is one area in the Constitution as of now in the provisions which is actually under which the Finance Commission is operating, which has not been given serious thought by many people. We have taken it for granted. That is Article 275. Now, if you go through the Article 275, there is no permanent mandate for the Finance Commission. It was only a transitory provision mandate given to the Finance Commissions all these years. If you read it correctly, I'll just quote this from the Constitution. It says that the provisions in Article 275, other than Class 1, envisage such sums as Parliament may by law shall be charged on the Consolidated Fund of India in each year, as grant in aid of revenues to such states as the Parliament may determine to be in need of assistance, and different sums may be fixed for the different states. This is what the Commission has been asked under the terms of reference, or the Commission has been doing, under which all the grants and including the revenue deficit grants are being provided. Now, the provision of 273 reads, until the provision is made by the Parliament under Clause 1, the powers conferred on the Parliament under the clause shall be exercisable by the President by order, and any order made by the President under this clause shall have the effect subject to any provision made by the Parliament. So it is the President who is actually given till the Parliament is making law. Then it says, provided that after a Finance Commission has been constituted, no order shall be made under this clause by the President, except after considering the recommendations of the Finance Commission. This is how the Finance Commission is coming into the picture. If tomorrow Parliament wants to exercise its own power as given in this thing and remove the provision, then Article 275(1) will read, it is a Parliament by law which will allocate money which should be charged to the Consolidated Fund for distribution to the states. So this is one area which has not been seen. It could also be considered, because it has got an impact moving forward. If that is done, then you have only Article 280. And if you have Article 280, you have only the net of collections at the center, revenues, which will actually go to the states. So we could land up in such a situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Central. As usual, you made very insightful and detailed remarks. I'm sure the states will, Kerala will take it. But you made one takeaway, important takeaway me, is the need for some of the states, particularly the neighboring states, to get their act together as a vis-a-vis the center, which Mr. Srinivasan also said, and I hope that that will be taken note of. So now we come back to Professor Joseph. Do you have a PowerPoint?
Yeah. Professor Sudipta Manja, who is chairing this session, whom I consider as one of my wonderful teachers, who has shown me, who taught me that a teacher could also be a friend. The respected K.M. Chandrasekhar, respected Sendri, I note the presence of Planning Board member Jiju, of course, Pinaki, and I can see Mohan here, Viramani and Parameshwar and other who have made a lot of effort in organizing it, Harilal and wonderful colleagues of all students of CDS. And I also note the presence of my own colleagues and students from GIFT. Okay, it is a very interesting event. I'm very happy that this issue is catching a lot of attention, which is richly deserved one. I'm not, because in 5 minutes, I have a lot to talk on it, but I'm trying to be very, very brief, because within 5 minutes. I basically start with the premise that I'm actually presenting something on the basis of a paper which I am writing with Kiran Kumar, who is my colleague, who is also here. And any misinterpretation, we will blame each other. Now, basic premise which I start is that institutions do play an important role in development, which is by now well recognized. And institutions need to change in accordance with the changing context. And if there is significant inertia, that could be detrimental to development. In the case of the issue that we are deliberating at this juncture, In India, we have articulated an elaborate institutional architecture to share the divisible pool in a context wherein there is a congenital inequality between the union and the states. As already said, while the union mops up the most of the resources, the responsibilities are mostly with the subnational entities. So that is precisely why this institutional architecture has been articulated. And in this, among these, there is a finance commission. I cannot, the people who have worked here, they worked for the finance commission, with the finance commission, regardless of, they have played an incredible role in a sense in keeping India as a nation. Of course, there could be variation within them, but nonetheless, this is a fact. There are indeed a number of issues in terms of, as already said, I really like the way in which Parameswaran posed the whole problem. But for this particular discussion, I would like to kind of, to be very provocative. Idea is actually to, unless in Malayalam is saying that you catch hold of the dhoti, you get at least a kerchief. So the idea that we are going to provoke is that we need to highlight, to correct the fundamental flaw in fiscal devolution in the country. This is what I would like to type this presentation in 5 minutes. What is this? We know that in India, in the devolution criteria, we have different, 45% is based on per capita income, understandable. The underlying logic is that higher your per capita income of a state concerned, higher your possibility for mopping up tax resources, and naturally your ability to provide basic public services to the people concerned, higher tax. So states with a higher tax, a higher per capita income will be given smaller devolution, and vice versa. But there are studies from NIPFP, also from my own colleagues, Mohan is not here, and of course, Shaijan. We have studies in my institute and NIPFP shown that there is an inverse relationship between the per capita income and the tax GDP ratio of Indian states. And that means that if your per capita income rising, your tax GDP ratio declines, the basic premise doesn't hold. Now the question is, how this declining happened? That inquiry led us to the doorsteps of 3 factors. First, you cannot talk about tax without talking about the economy. You should know about the economy that we are talking about. Second is the rules and institutions that govern the distribution of the taxing powers between the union and the states. And third, indeed, the output orientation of your economy. What we found is that if the state's share in the GSDP of service sector is higher, your tax GDP decline. In Kerala, for example, 1980s, service sector accounted for 42% of your GSDP, and your tax GSDP ratio was something like 12% according to KK George. Today it is less than 7%. And during this period, our share of service sector in Kerala has increased from 42% to almost 66%. The growing sector of the economy is service sector. And when we examined across states, we found that wherever the service sector share has increased, the tax GSDP ratio has declined. So what actually happened is that on the one hand, your per capita income increases, service, okay. Why this is declining? According to 94 Finance Act, the power to tax this growing sector is with the central government, not with the state government. So, as your service, if your income is, your per capita income is driven by service sector, your tax GSDP decline. There are 2 factors in operation. On the one hand, this again something like double whammy. On the one hand, with higher per capita income, you get a lower part of your divisible pool. Secondly, your own tax revenue also declined. For example, in case of Karnataka, you find that the decline in the tax GSDP ratio was 4.6%, much higher than Kerala. So in Kerala, it is slightly lower. In both Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, own tax revenue to GSDP has declined by almost 2%. So what I'm trying to argue is that this structure of the economy and the rule relating to the taxing power does matter, and more equally important factor which Govindra has recently highlighted is the orientation of your economy. If your economy is more outward oriented and more export is coming, your per capita income is coming out of more exports, which is not taxed, your tax GSDP will again decline. So what I'm trying to say here is that today when we formed the Finance Commission, our aspiration was basically to become to address the underdevelopment issue of feeding the people. Today you are dreaming very high to be a developed economy. And if you want to achieve this particular target of a developed economy, you need to have a paradigm shift in your devolution criteria. Until now, you have been trying to handhold the laggards. It is very important. Today, if you want to reach where you want to reach, you need to have a paradigm shift in where you need to handhold the laggards along with promoting the growth boomers, or at least don't penalize the performers. And this is the major point which I want to say, that there is the need for revisiting your per capita income, 45% of the devolution, adjust it for your service sector, adjust it for orientation, your export, and this will be, and in fact, ultimately you will end up with the manner in which, your GSDP is cooked. Perhaps ultimately you end up in, perhaps population is better measure. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Professor Joseph. Now, Professor Harilal.
Professor Sudito, Professor Veeramani, Chandrasekhar sir, distinguished panelists and friends. We had many presentations. We covered most of the issues that should be discussed. And we are going to have 2 more short presentations and then maybe longer presentations from Professor Sudito and Professor Pinaki. And in fact, I am looking forward to listening to these presentations. So I need to be very brief. And I will just raise one issue, which I think is very fundamental, which is general, but that should also be discussed in the context of the 16th Finance Commission, our memorandum, etc. That's about the size of the government. Because, in all our discussions, we are focusing on distribution of resources among different tiers of government, between the central government and the provincial governments and local governments, between center and state governments and across state governments. Now, what about the overall size of the government? What should be the ideal size of the government? I mean, the combined size, local governments plus provincial governments plus the central government. Overall size in the sense, total revenue, total resources mobilized and total expenditure vis-a-vis national income aggregates. Size of the state in terms of expenditure compared to GDP. Now, we know from the general literature, economic history, that the size of the state in most countries, including developed capitalist countries, the size of the state has been increasing over time. And what should be our approach to the size of overall size of the our governments? In fact, now we have taken a conservative fiscal view, and we all now support a minimalist state. And we all believe that the smaller the government, the better. And no, we know the global context in which this assumption is coming. We are dependent on finance capital. We are dependent on portfolio investment. And if we are too much dependent on portfolio investment, we cannot afford to have higher fiscal deficit. And also with respect to corporate income tax, tax on wealthy, we will have to be properly aggressive. So my point is this: there is pressure on the central government to reduce the size of the government, and because of this, the monetization of deficit is also ruled out these days. Because of this pressure to reduce the size of the government, central government is trying to put that burden on the state governments. If the central government under Panagaria, in fact, KMC was mentioning about the attitude of Professor Panagaria in an indirect way. We all know Professor Panagaria, we have studied him. And he has a very well-known view about fiscal deficit, size of the government, etc. And it's very clear that he will continue that view in the Finance Commission also. He will not be taking a very positive view to increase the overall size of the government. Okay, let him take that view. But given the size of permissible government, how the burden will be shared? In fact, no, if you take recent history, finance history of India, in spite of the Finance Commission awards, the central government is trying to give general lectures on size of the government, but it is taking away all the resources. KMC was mentioning about RBI profits, disinvestment of public sector, monetization of public assets, and then cess and other things. They are taking away the money. As far as tax and resource, sharing of resources are concerned. And then what about borrowing? In the case of borrowing also, the same approach is taken. They want to reduce the size of the government. They want to reduce the size of borrowing, but the burden is very neatly transferred to the state governments. So this particular issue will have to be focused in this manner. That's a very, very important point. Now, coming to fiscal equalization. See, if you interpret fiscal equalization in a very mechanical way, again, the size of government will come in a big way. For developed states, which are having higher per capita income, the idea is that the size of the government should be almost the same as governments which are not doing so well. So you are not taking into consideration state of development or stage of development at all. For states like Kerala, it's in a different stage of development. And we should have a different idea about the role of the state in a state like Kerala. Like we have not been investing so much in physical infrastructure. As rightly told here, we have been investing in human resources, in health, education, etc. We have been doing quite well. But we know that no, in Kerala, we have not been investing enough in infrastructure. So stage of development is very, very important. We need to emphasize this particular point also. And Finance Commission should be taking a liberal view as far as the size of the government according to stage of development. Now, a general kind of issue, which is a point which I would like to add in the area of discussion on centrally sponsored programs here. You know, we have all been discussing about the difficulty with one size fit all kind of approach. And centrally sponsored programs have become a big tamasha. It's extremely difficult to implement centrally sponsored programs. Mr. Senthil and KMC mentioned about it here. Now, we may probably suggest that there should be a shelf of projects from which the state government can choose the programs which will be of interest to them, which will be meaningful to them. Or the state governments like Kerala or any state for that matter, they should be allowed to frame their own centrally sponsored programs. I'm not speaking about the center sector programs. I'm speaking about the centrally sponsored programs. There, the program should be evolved and designed by the state government. Maybe academic institutions can take a lead. They should develop centrally sponsored programs which can be implemented in the region, and it should be presented, and there can be a mechanism by which it is evaluated, and finally the central government can, or a forum can, decide whether such a locally designed or provincially designed centrally sponsored program can be allowed. So this kind of a flexible approach is really required at the central government level. These are the points. No level.
Thank you very much, Professor Harilal. Surajit Das.
Thank you, Professor Mandal, the chairperson, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Professor Bidamani, for the invitation. I think most of the points have already come in the discussion. I just want to make 3 quick points within 5 minutes. For last 4 or 5 years, my area of research interest has been human development, and particularly human development by fiscal policy. So fiscal policy for human development. Now, in India, given the constitutional arrangement, we all know that human development largely comes under the jurisdiction of state governments. And there are ample empirical evidence available worldwide that if government puts sincere effort on health, education, etc., human development can remarkably improve. So given the fact that, and also thank you for mentioning that there are a lot of gaps in terms of per capita income of people or per capita GSDP, but human development gaps are also quite wide, not only within the states, but it varies state to state quite widely. I come from the state of West Bengal. You know, eastern part of the country, Assam and Odisha and so on, seem to be a very different country as compared to the southern part of the country or western part of the country. So in UP and Bihar, when I visit to the fields, if you go to the metro cities, Patna and Calcutta, and they are all set. But little interior, if you enter, the rural areas of Kerala are just not comparable with the rural areas of West Bengal and so on. So given the fact that finance minister was mentioning that state exchequers are under extremely tight situation, particularly after the implementation of GST. Professor Amaresh Bagchi wrote that once the tax rates are fixed centrally, you virtually lose the tax power. So after that, a lot of us wrote in EPW and elsewhere that state exchequers are likely to be under tight situation after implementation of GST. Now, under this, the importance of central transfer to states increase manifold after the implementation of GST, particularly when there is a cap on the fiscal deficit to GSDP ratio for the states. Ultimately, the residual becomes the human development expenditures and the infrastructure and capital expenditures incurred by the state governments. So they become the real victims. But from the point of view of development and particularly human development, these are the 2 areas where state governments are supposed to spend more money in order to fill up the social sector gaps as much as possible. And Kerala is doing more successfully than many other states in the country. So there must be, in my opinion, that as far as efficiency criteria in the horizontal distribution is concerned, it shouldn't be only that efficiency vis-a-vis tax effort. It should be efficiency vis-a-vis achievements in the human development indicators in the state. It should be linked, there should be some weightage given also on the decentralization, degree of decentralization, which others couldn't do, but Kerala has done successfully. So these 2 are my suggestions vis-a-vis the equity concern. Of course, Kerala's per capita GDP, GSDP is much higher as compared to many other states. However, what finance minister was mentioning, the cost of public service delivery is very different in Kerala as compared to, let's say, in West Bengal. So based on that, in fact, special category states, hilly states have been separated out in the devolution criteria because cost of public service delivery is higher in the hilly areas. So the value of 500 rupee note in Kerala on an average and value of 500 rupee note in West Bengal is not the same. Therefore, in terms of per capita, whatever devolution or per capita income gap, I have a feeling that there should be some assessment of the real per capita GSDP instead of nominal per capita income. So the moment if you depreciate it by some cost of living index, which varies widely state to state, then it is possible to make an assessment of the real value of per capita nominal income. So the criteria of horizontal distribution should be based on that and not on the nominal value. That's my submission. And the third thing, I think states like Kerala should focus more on vertical devolution because it is on the higher side of the income distribution. So in the vertical devolution, the cess and surcharge I am hearing for last 15 years, nothing is being, I mean, you can call it cess and surcharge, you can give some other name, tax on tax, you can call it some non-tax revenue, you can put it inside tax revenue and so on and so forth. There are other concerns about this disinvestment made by the huge disinvestments made by the central government, which have implications for the state. Thiruvananthapuram airport has been disinvested and so on, many others. So that is non-tax revenue, that is considered to be non-tax revenue, but actually Professor Raja Chelaiya argued that it should be considered as a negative capital expenditure. So, but for all practical purposes, the way central government is considering it as part of the revenue receipt and deducting it while calculating fiscal deficit. Now, if they have implications for the states, then states also should get some benefit of this disinvestment. This cannot be made part of the divisible pool because of the fact that they are not tax collection. So tax devolution, it cannot be called. But something should be incorporated, I think, in the consideration of vertical devolution. And for vertical devolution, I think there should be a formula. As somebody was mentioning, I think that it should be made transparent. This 41%, 31%, 32%, whatever by X percentage, the considerations are written in chapter 8 of the report. However, the weightage on each and every criteria is not transparent. Until and unless we have another formula for vertical devolution incorporating all these considerations, and until and unless the finance commissions make the weights transparent, that on the basis of what considerations they are deciding X percent should be devolved of the central tax, and what are the criteria they are giving weightage to. So that is my submission. I'm thinking of some formula for quite some time, and it can be formulated. It is not very difficult. There are political considerations, there are other nuances, I guess, but at the same time, I mean, for future generation of this country, I believe, and for the unity of this country, for this fiscal federalism to go on in the longer run, I think it is absolutely important that we make the criteria as transparent as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Das. We have a written submission from Mr. Mohan, which I will ask you to read out later. But before that, you know, we have Professor Lekha Chakravarti, who's been participating online. So, Lekha, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, would you like to give us your comments before we move on?
Sir, I will wait for Pinaki's presentation and your presentation. I will come in, for when you open the floor. Thank you so much.
Okay. So then go ahead.
R. Mohan has given 7 comments. So what he has for points I wish to state in the workshop. One, the item in the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission had given rise to strident criticism from the certain states, including Kerala. Main issue was mandating the use of population based on 2011 census instead of 1971. There were other issues like a review of grants, recommendation of the 14th Finance Commission, and giving a separate treatment to populist schemes of the states while leaving out of that of the union. The second point is that in contrast to the above, terms of reference of the 16th Finance Commission has stuck to the constitutional mandate. This is a welcome change and gives more degrees of freedom to the Finance Commission. But the chance of additional terms of reference cannot be ruled out. Ideally, there should not be any additional terms of reference restricting the 16th Finance Commission. Third, the first task before the 16th Finance Commission is to address the question of vertical fiscal imbalances between union and states in view of the divisible pool shrinkage as a proportion of surcharges and cesses around the rise. Fourth, the sector-specific grants need to be relooked and emphasis is to be given to untied funds as the 14th Finance Commission had done. Fifth, the highly sensitive task before the 16th Finance Commission is to delicately balance the issue of horizontal fiscal imbalances among the states. While addressing the problems of largely populated and lower per capita income states, the 16th Finance Commission needs to give considerations to continuous fall in tax share of the some states. This needs to be stabilized with the general purpose grants under Article 275. In addition, the sixth point, in addition, grants can be used to address specific cost disability considerations of different states. Seventh point, thin spreading of sector-specific grants should be avoided. Yeah, that's, thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we go to the main presentation from Professor Pinaki Chakravarti. You have PowerPoint? While we're waiting, I just want to say that we started a bit late and so on. There's some slippage of time. We might have lunch delayed by about 15-20 minutes, not more than that, I think. So please bear with us. Sit over there. Thank you. Mani, Parameshwaran, Dr. Hrilal, Dr. Joseph, Mr. Senthil, Sri Chandrasekhar, Shuroji, distinguished friends, colleagues, and my dear students. So, since the objective, as Mr. Chandrasekhar mentioned in the beginning, that this is a kind of a, if I may say, preparatory meeting by CDS to have a discussion with the Finance Commission. I think it would be, in my view, a good opportunity to actually talk about the larger macro issues to the Commission, sensitize them about what probably CDS thinks in terms of what are the issues that are important from the macroeconomic perspective, from the perspective of India's position in the global macroeconomy, the major macroeconomic risk, and then the issue of vertical devolution and the horizontal devolution, and how Kerala issue becomes an important point. I think since Commission is visiting to gain understanding of state perspective is very important. But at the same time, what kind of issues and approach Commission should
actually should consider could be done through this meeting. So with that view, I have actually it's not moving. Okay. So what is the present macroeconomic context? There is large macroeconomic risk at the global level. And we have been talking about, India's growth story, about India going to grow at the rate of 8% per annum. Now when Finance Commission works on nominal numbers, so the first important assumption for Finance Commission will be what should be the growth rate. Now there are three approaches to it. If we look at 13th Finance Commission's approach, 13th Finance Commission was constituted when the global financial crisis was on, and they had deliberated on growth stories and then assumed a growth rate of 13.5%. So around 5% inflation and 8% GDP growth rate. If you look at COVID, 14th Finance Commission did not have a major macroeconomic issue. So 14th Finance Commission growth rate was around 13.5%. In the case of 15th, they had assumed year-wise growth rate. Now, what is the kind of growth rate that the Finance Commission is going to assume? I think if there is some approach that CDS can suggest that this is the likely growth scenario for the next 5 years, I think that would actually help the Commission to get a perspective on what are the risks and what are the macroeconomic outlook for the next 5-6 years. I think that is one. Second issue is about this 3% GDP growth rate, 3% FRBM target that we are talking about. Now, 3% FRBM target proposed by the 12th Finance Commission was when the savings rate of the country, financial savings rate of the country was 11%, 5% was drawn at that point in time drawn by the private corporate sector, so 6% was left for the government. Now today we are talking about a savings rate which is around financial savings rate at 6%. So when the savings rates are declining, financial savings rates, so in such a situation, if the Finance Commission, I think Finance Commission should be sensitized to the fact that in the face of declining saving, you really cannot then say that I cut the deficit to a lower level, because that would result in huge contraction in state's fiscal space. So the macroeconomic context during 12 and macroeconomic context now is very, very different. Second issue is equity versus efficiency debate in the federal grant. I think the approach Finance Commissions have been taking, I think 14th has taken, subsequently I think 15th more or less followed that, is that there should be a trust-based approach. I'm not talking about the CSS, because they kept it at 41%. So you cannot blame the Commission because of the increase in cess and surcharges. It has been increased by Government of India. So if we look at the vertical devolution, it was at 41, 42%. And also large part of the central transfer in terms of total resources, 60-70%, and your number also shows that 68 to 70% is going through tax devolution, which is fine. But that means large part is autonomous. Now, on the question of cess and surcharges, I think this point about, center is increasing cess and surcharges, and that's why the states are, adversely affected. I think this is absolutely correct. There is no second argument on that. But the point here is, if cess and surcharges are not there, that means center doesn't have an alternative way of financing this centrally sponsored scheme. In that case, unless you restructure CSS, it would actually mean state share going up. Because today it is 42%, 41%, but a large part of the CSS is coming in the form of grants. And that is financing this scheme. So if we are saying tomorrow that, all the CSS and surcharges should come to the divisible pool, so divisible will become 42%. There is no difference between the net devolution and tax devolution. I think what is most important to do is to do two basic exercises, in my view. One is how much of cess and surcharges are financing centrally sponsored scheme and how much the center is using for its own union list function. So if a large part of it is now being used to finance union list function, I think that is absolutely unfair. So because a part of it could have been taxed and shared with the states, instead of that, union list function subjects which are constitutionally defined and not a temporary function in nature, is being financed through a non-divisible pool of resources. So I think that approach, I think that division of how much cess is financing government expenditure of the union, which is in the union list, and how much of it is financing the subjects in the state list, and how much of it is financing in the concurrent list. If that is identified and presented to the commission, I think it will make a strong case for the commission to argue about a higher vertical share. Otherwise, asking for a higher vertical share is not going to really make a major difference to commission's approach. Second issue I wanted to highlight in the context of issues and approach of the Finance Commission, issue of non-divisible pool. We are only, I think Harilal also mentioned about it. I think the non-divisible pool has changed because of the nature and structure of the economy, which is continuously changing. One major part of the non-divisible pool is high increase in, high share of this kind of windfall gains, like, spectrum revenue. There is this high, reserve transfer from RBI to Government of India. These are all non-divisible pool, but so Finance Commission should actually, probably CDS can say that there needs to be a framework to understand how windfall gains are shared in a federal system in various other countries. I think that is something which the Finance Commission should look at, because if the non-tax revenues are not those traditional sources of interest earning from public sector enterprises, anyway, there is hardly any public sector enterprise now, and dividends and profits, if that is no longer the case, and we are having windfall gain from various alternative sources because of technology changing nature of economy and various other factors, I think how that non-divisible pool should be shared, whether states should have a right on that, because these are all within the country. States actually spend money. How do you share that non-divisible pool? How it is done internationally? Probably some approach towards that could help in major way. As far as the vertical devolution is concerned, I think, as I said, how do you make 41% as 41% is one aspect. How do you make 41% 50%? I think that approach is very different, because 50% of the gross revenue of the union is already coming to the states in the form of centrally sponsored scheme and in the form of tax devolution. So I don't see any scope for this going up. So if we say that it should be more than 41%, then we really have to make a credible case for it. And in this context, I was involved in the 15th Finance Commission's Memorandum of Kerala very actively, and there the approach that was taken by Government of Kerala for the vertical devolution, and vertical devolution means for all the states, so it is not Kerala specific. I think the approach that was taken, I'll just explain. I think the approach that was taken, that what is the total revenue of Government of India? The total revenue of Government of India is gross tax revenues, that means cess and surcharges plus all the taxes. Then you have your non-tax revenues, right? And if we are able to estimate, I think estimate the revenue deficit adjusted for the differences in expenditure responsibilities, and post that, if both the revenues are equal, that means center has the same amount of revenue, state has the same amount of revenue, adjusted for their expenditure responsibility, that should be the level of vertical devolution. And that worked out to be 51%, 50.9%. And that number is available. I think it will be somewhere there. I look it in my computer also. And that worked out to 51%. Now, a couple of changes have happened. One after COVID. One is increase in borrowing by the states, increase in interest-free loans to the states, and then large increase in central expenditure on state subject because of various new schemes, central scheme that was introduced. I think Finance Secretary mentioned about Jal Jeevan Mission, lot of program on sanitation. So I think this number could change if we now rework on these issues. And if these numbers are changed, what should be the level of vertical devolution because of this changes in assignment of expenditure through the CSS will have to be worked out, and the vertical devolution needs to be proposed. So that's the overall approach on the vertical devolution that CDS can probably say can say to the Finance Commission. And this is something which is, and I don't think there is a huge scope for this going up. 6.8% of GDP, that means 7% of GDP out of 19% that Parameshwaran talked about, total revenue, is coming to the states. So from the taxes. So if it is very difficult to expect that is going up to another 3% of 3%. Why do I say that it cannot go up? Because if it goes up to another 2 percentage points, and center's revenue deficit today is 3% of GDP. I'm talking about revenue deficit, not fiscal deficit. So you'll have a huge macro instability with 5% revenue deficit for the next 5 years and 7% fiscal deficit in the next 5 years. So from that point of view, practically, even if practically it's not possible to increase the share of devolution and grants together. So any approach that we should try to, any approach that the state should take, the kind of approach a state should take should be to increase fiscal autonomy. That means changing the composition of the transfer, restructuring of CSS, and looking at and telling to the commission, generating evidence to say that the CSS is not only financing the centrally sponsored scheme, large part of the union government expenditure is being financed by finance through a non-divisible pool by applying by introducing cess and surcharges, not taxation. I'll give you a very important, interesting example. I think during COVID, 5 lakh rupees was the increase in the exemption limit of income tax, and then so that was a direct loss of revenue to the state. But to compensate this, a surcharge was imposed on income above 50 lakhs. So that means that became a direct revenue from the center, but was not shared with the state. So center did not lose revenue, but state lost revenue because of these changes. So I think these examples also can be brought out in the last 4, 5, 6 years. What kind of changes have been made which actually reduce non-divisible? Those examples will be telling. Rather than talking about, because cess and surcharges has become a mode of transfer which is creating problem. And as for now, I'll go to a couple of Kerala specific issues. I think there is a lot of discussion about the quality of GSDP data, etc. So what I have done, I had presented this before when I came last time, I think 2 weeks back to CDS. I think what is most important to look at, this is comparable GSDP data of all the states, taken from 12, 13, 14, and 15 Finance Commission. Now, if we look at Kerala's ranking in comparable GSDP during the 12th Finance Commission was 5. And now Kerala's rank is 3. So if Kerala's share has come down 50% to today at 1.97%, I think one of the major factors is this sharp increase in the ranking. And Kerala's ranking probably has further increased. You don't know what the comparative GSDP data will throw up. And if it is again 2 or 3, I think with a 45% distance of income, Kerala's share is not going to be what the share today is. And this is not something which we really cannot be saying that we will not be, my per capita income should not grow. So per capita income should be growing. And in such a situation, how do you maintain Kerala's share is something that needs to be discussed, and the devolution formula needs to be proposed. I think Mr. Senthil has proposed a very interesting formula, and that probably can be discussed. So this is one, and I also tell you why Punjab share. Punjab was second highest per capita income state. Punjab share is now 9. Punjab's per capita income ranking is now 9. So that's that. So if we see that Punjab share is going up and Kerala share is not going down, this ranking difference will tell you why it is happening. So there is nothing extraordinary has happened. It has changed, per capita income has changed, and income distance has a very high share. And this is the kind of inequality that we see. If we look at top 5 states, their income has increased in absolute term. I am not doing, sophisticated convergence analysis here. Just to make a simple point, I think total change in GSDP is 907%. That means 9 times, top 5 states between 15th and between 12th and 15th. And if we look at bottom state, it's 6 times, middle state 8 times. And if you look at the coefficient of variation, there is the coefficient of, so bottom states actually it is not increasing. The variation is much less, but if the coefficient of variation is very, very high in the top 5 and middle. So that's the kind of story that we get. This is on Kerala finances. I am not going into this. Now, this is very important from the context point of view of overall approach in terms of borrowing. Now, let's look at this. Now, we have got these 4 quadrants, and in these 4 quadrants, I actually could not put the graph, but from the word find, here some problem has happened. If you look at the first quadrant, so this is the per capita income on the horizontal axis, and in the vertical axis, you have got the debt to GDP ratio. If you look at the first quadrant, and first quadrant is a set of states. So these are fiscally rich, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, but they're income poor. Then if you go to the upper quadrant, the second one, those are fiscally poor and also income poor. Bihar, West Bengal, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, and Jharkhand. And then you have this category of states that are fiscally poor: Punjab, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Haryana, high debt, high fiscal deficit, high revenue deficit, but income rich. And then you have fiscally rich, income poor states. Now, this is the crux of the story. Now we are talking about one size fits all FRBM. Now, if this is the story, and we are saying that one size fits all FRBM is not going to work, you just see the downside fiscal risk of proposing that you should have a differential FRBM target. In that case, the strongest contenders to have a higher FRBM target would be these states who are poor, as well as having a very prudent fiscal management. So they would say, I should be getting more because I have got less income, so I need to invest more, and you should also give me more money because my capital investment is low, and that's the case. Capital investment data I don't have, but I'm certain that the capital investment in per capita term is very low, very low. So if we say one size fits all FRBM doesn't work, the downside risk of such an approach would be that will make the case for Kerala even. It will worsen the argument. The overall approach in terms of will be in a very Kerala will be in a very weak position. So we really cannot say that one size fits all FRBM should not be done. Implication is this. So that is one. Second is outstanding guarantees and states. This is a huge fiscal transparency issues, and I have done this work from the RBI data. It's not. There's a lot of work has gone into preparing this graph. So again, if we look at the middle, so income rich and states, they also have high guarantees. So these guarantees and contingent liabilities are not reflected in the budget. So their fiscal risks are also very high. So we are talking about a set of states who have high income, high operating fiscal risk, and has large revenue deficit. So the point is, any fiscal restructuring plan that you propose, keep these issues in mind and ensure that it actually. Let me put it this way. So I think when based on this data, if Finance Commission has to take an approach, what can they do from their perspective? Because they are trying to create a framework which will ensure fiscal stability. So if they are trying to ensure fiscal stability and trying to be symmetric across states, in those cases, the kind of approach they will have to take will have to be very different. For Kerala, Rajasthan, Punjab, Haryana, we have to be always Bengal, we have to be very different from the rest. And there is precedent because that was done by 12th Finance Commission, that was done by 13th Finance Commission, 14 did not do. So what are the risks, associated risk of such different fiscal adjustment plan will have to be factored in and seen how Kerala may actually, let's not, what should Kerala gain? I'm saying given the way public finance has evolved in the last 10, 15 years, in what all areas Kerala may lose, that is the first thing we should analyze. And then write our approaches and memorandum to memorandum. I have got two solutions to this. I'm only listing problems. And one is, I think successive finance commission, except 14 and 15, actually gave debt relief to the states because different states have different levels of debt. So it's, and that is where I think Kerala memorandum should actually say post-COVID, there has been a major increase in debt to GDP ratio of the states, which we have seen in the previous graph, which is now around 27-28% of GDP. And we are proposing that we hope that it will be a 60% of GDP. Then the states together, states only 20% by 20 to 23. That was the idea. After COVID, we don't have a number. So I think it is very important to analyze and say that if really states have to become fiscally stable, I think there is a need for a debt relief. And how that debt relief can stabilize these high debt states on the upper quadrant, both low and middle, so both poor and rich, and that should be worked out and presented to the commission. So commission also gets convinced that it can be an approach, and on top of that, a revenue deficit grant that is being provided, if provided, can bring stability to the fiscal system, particularly for a state like Kerala, which has got high revenue deficit, high fiscal deficit, high debt. So now fiscal inequality in public investment, fiscal equalization through the mechanism of finance commission transfer and non-finance commission grant is limited to revenue expenditure of states. So all the transfer that the finance commission makes is all for revenue expenditure. There is no explicit mechanism to equalize capital expenditure. Given that capital expenditure is also low in poorer states, that means fiscally poor, fiscally rich and income poor states, and also it is low, very low for states who are income rich and fiscally poor like Kerala, Punjab, Rajasthan, Haryana. I think these states will have to ask for a capital grant fund. I think in that case, because of large revenue deficit, you are not able to make capital investment. So kind of capital grant fund that can be, that can be constituted, and those mechanisms can be worked out. So the idea of a capital grant fund, I'm writing this up, I'll soon be publishing it. A capital grant fund can be thought of and create a separate fund, and the states can actually take money as grants. If center can give interest-free loans, I think they should stop giving interest-free loans. They should convert it into a grant and give to the states based on what they want in terms of their capital investment requirement, rather than having a centrally sponsored screen on the capital side. So that kind of an approach could possibly be done. And on the question of horizontal equity, I think we have talked enough about equity. Actually, transfer has become very, very regressive, because the weightage to equity was 70% in the 11th Finance Commission report. The equity content has come down to now 45%. So if we are really talking about that Kerala should get, now the equity component is 35% that a lot of us are proposing, including I think that's the only way for Kerala to benefit. I think it also has its own risk of approaching proposing such a thing by a state like Kerala. So please think about it. I don't think I have a solution, but I think it is important to understand that equity component, which was 70% income distance in 11th Finance Commission, it has become 45%. Actually, redistribution has reached its political limit. Let us accept this fact, and it is only change of things within a band. So I think how Kerala benefits when that band changes, that is the issue that we should discuss. And I would think that Kerala probably has no option but to propose a further decline in the income distance. But that will be against the general approach that Kerala takes on equity. So that is something, how do you put it? It's also, it is very complex. Now, let me not get into this issue of individual state division. Let me just get you to this, show you this number. So let us look at 12 Finance Commission data. And these are the rankings changed based on each state. Can you remove that header? Okay. So Goa, Punjab, Maharashtra, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh. These are the 5 states which are the top 5 states in 12th Finance Commission. And they got 8% of the total share of revenues, tax devolution during 12th Finance Commission. Today, Goa, Sikkim, Haryana, Kerala, Karnataka are the top 5 states of the country, and they are getting 7.439% of the devolution. Now, look at bottom 19 states, bottom 13 states, their share was 57%. Today, oh, this is, it was better. Okay, let me just remove it. Can you a little more down? Yeah. Okay, put it in the middle. Put it here. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. So if we look at these states, bottom 30 states, and it's a large number, 57%. Their total tax devolution. Today it has declined to 54%. So as I had shown that transfer system has become less and less progressive, that's very evident from this number. Now, which category of states actually benefited out of this redistribution? Because the top state share, it is the middle income states who have been benefiting. So Kerala was middle income states and it had some benefit because but now Kerala has moved to the top. So this changing structure of income and transfer becoming less and less progressive from the larger national context is a major issue. I think that approach will have to be considered when we say Kerala's share has to go up. I think in this context, the issue is more complex than what actually is being generally said. Ki some states are being penalized, etc. Individuals. So penalization is not probably true, but fiscal stability is a concern. If the share continuously goes down for a state, which has happened for Kerala, which has happened for Tamil Nadu, which has happened for Karnataka, it has its impact on fiscal stability of the states. So because the deficit may go up, their revenue deficit may go up, debt may go up. So how decline in share has impacted deficit and debt of a state is a different argument than the question of equity. I think that is what we should approach and say that this has created this kind of fiscal instability in my system, so I need more money, whether it is through tax devolution, whether it is through grant, or whether it is through capital fund. Those options then can be worked out and proposed to the Finance Commission. Okay. Okay. It is not moving. So this is just those numbers. I have just, made differences. This is why I am saying fiscal stability can be made as a strong argument for higher transfer is that only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 states out of 28, 9 states actually have seen significant decline in transfer, not except Gujarat. Gujarat's decline was very small. And if you take Assam out and Jharkhand out, because Jharkhand also has got large mining revenue, because the decline is the states which have seen significant decline in share is Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh undivided, if we take, and then Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. So that is where the question of fiscal stability argument, apart from separate, as a separate argument, can be made to the Commission with a proper evidence-based generation of number. So finally, this is my last slide. Yeah, no, last but one. So increase in devolution made large part of the union transfer untied, which benefited all the states. Due to the elimination of planned and non-planned distinctions, states with large deficits were also able to receive revenue deficit grant. There is a need to look at both tax devolution and grants together. So revenue deficit grant is the point that Mr. Senthil made in his presentation. There is a need to develop a mechanism to create a fiscal space for capital spending. That can be a capital grant fund that can be proposed. In this regard, an equalization capital grant fund for states with special need may help. Kerala may consider this as a part of the memorandum. A discussion on divisible pool and non-divisible pool is necessary. Kerala may consider to raise this issue at the national level. Quantify and some issues related to development policy of Kerala and transfers. Quantify the opportunity cost of having Kerala specific cost disabilities. I mentioned this and present it to the 16th Finance Commission. And with numbers, 3 critical cost disabilities are large coastline, climate related vulnerabilities affecting agriculture and old age related fiscal cost. Make a difference between the strategic need with fiscal implications and fiscal expenditure need for socio-economic development. I think a state-specific capital investment grant may help in this regard for financing strategic need. And Finance Commission can propose this to the Union government to do it. Specific grants for state-specific issues may help support the fiscal need of the state of Kerala. Scope for increasing vertical devolution is limited. However, have a clear plan of reducing the debt to GDP ratio from its current level of 34% in the next 5 years to 27% of GDP to create fiscal space for development spending because they have large revenue deficit, because of large interest payment obligation. Finally, development policies are state specific. Kerala specific development policies should be based on knowledge economy to harness a strong global integration. And for that, if you are able to quantify some number, what kind of investment is required, probably that also can be presented to the Kerala memorandum to the Finance Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pinaki, for that very detailed and comprehensive presentation, including your own proposals for both the national level as well as for the state memorandum. So now the floor is open for discussion. We are a little bit behind time. Let me first, Lekha, can you come in now?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, am I audible? Thank you so much. Actually, I was taken aback after hearing Pinaki's presentation because the proposals I had in mind, he completely refuted and he alerted the dangers of those proposals. And the speakers before me also spoke about those proposals. So we have to be extremely careful when we ask for magnitude and when we ask for the change in the determinants or the devolution. So that was that, I was taken aback, or I was, little bit alert when I make the propositions. But, one clue I got from Pinaki's presentation is, if you're asking for magnitude, because we have every right to say that the divisible pool is getting shrunk, and it is because of the cess and surcharges, can we make the case the way Pinaki proposed, that can it be linked to the way in which the cess is utilized? And can that case be made? And, we should not be dealing it with only 50%, but how can it be made the case for asking for more divisible pool up to 60% if this is the way the shrinkage is happening in the cess and surcharges, that political economy question. The second political economy question he alerted is the way we are looking into the criteria, efficiency versus equity, because in general, we always argue for growth versus equity, but when economic convergence is a big issue before the Finance Commission, then we can't argue against equity, but how to deal with the population when we speak about it. That was also, I was taken aback how to put forward this proposal before the 16th Finance Commission, because when we are aware, Pinaki has a paper also on the economic convergence, the club convergence, and incorporating the fiscal federal parameters, economic convergence is going to be a big issue. But as Dr. Chandrasekhar mentioned, now the market-oriented person, Professor Pangaria, is not getting into economic convergence question at all versus rich catching up with the poor state. So that was the only space we are getting to argue equity versus efficiency question. So if we are penalized for efficiency, if the population is given so much of importance and the income distance, how to treat this variable? And Minister has pointed out, can we talk about the density of population, how the area within the the criteria needs to be tackled, how that area variable is going to be considered by the 16th Finance Commission. But, the prima facie evidence from the talk with the economist in Lutyens, Delhi, regarding the density of population, I think there is a high chance to look into the density population, which is inversely related to the cost of provisioning the services. So I was very happy when Minister put forward the case that it is directly related that if the density of population is high, then we have cost disabilities. But there is always a chance to look into the cost of services and density of population in an inversely related manner. Then again, we are getting into the trouble. Then, I looked into the Mint article by, Professor Sudipto. He has put forward the principle of subsidiarity. So there, we are giving importance to the general government. So in that case, when we talk about the third-tier system, if the third tier is given more importance, what could be the increase in the devolution, especially related to the capital grants proposed by Pinaki? And we all forgot to mention about ecological fiscal transfers, which was visualized by the 14th Finance Commission, first ever in the world. So we need to put forward that case as a cost disability, or giving more importance to what 14th Finance Commission has visualized as the ecological fiscal transfer, which, again, we can gain. These are the quick points I thought, and I always support Senthil's point that we need to have an institutional mechanism, because RBI cannot deal with the public debt management, because it's always a conflict of interest between the inflation targeting and the public debt management. So we should start thinking about an independent council to talk about the debt deficit dynamics. And finally, it will not be complete if I don't put forward my secret agenda of integrating gender into the IGFT. And Kerala will gain only if we integrate the gender lens into the IGFT, because the kind of support to the care economy infrastructure and the gender-related concerns, the gender budgeting by the state, if we provide more focus on those activities and those programs by the states, if we get a specific grant for that, Kerala will gain if we integrate a gender lens into the IGFT. Thank you so much, Veeramani, for having me. Thank you, Professor Sudipto Mandal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lega. Thank you for all those suggestions. So now we have a little bit of time for any questions from the floor, open discussion before we wind up. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so yeah, please go ahead.
Myself, Rusigas. I have a point. Although inclusivity important, but at the same time, I think when it comes to the trade-off between equity and efficiency, that has to be carefully needs to be balanced. And in the matter of actually fiscal federal transfer mechanism. So I think as far actually, yes, Professor Chakravarti's presentation, so what he suggests that it's not actually the criterion doesn't matter. Okay, it's because it's regressive in nature. The transfer, the way that it is going, so it's regressive in nature. It's not, it's in a sense it's not benefiting to the poorer states, but it's benefiting to the richer states. But the whole day we have been discussing that there has to be actually a balance, because maybe actually in terms of when we look at the actually income indicator, per capita income indicator, so it is actually yes, the wattage has been actually reducing over time. But when we take actually the equity aspect, equity wattage, total equity wattage. So maybe actually we need to actually combine actually like population criterion with the income distance criterion. So when we look at actually that, so then actually it benefits actually the poor states. So as a result, efficiency criterion is actually compromised there. So otherwise, we cannot actually say that, we cannot argue that it's not actually the criterion doesn't matter. But because it's based upon that only the resources are shared between the center and states. That's one point. And again, actually, Kerala to benefit, I think, yes. The fiscal decentralization indexes needs to be incorporated in the transfer mechanism, already emphasized by the other. So because on the ground that when we incorporate the fiscal decentralization index, what will happen? So the poor states which are actually bad performers or worse performers, they will be discouraged. They will be actually try to actually catch up with the advanced advanced states. So as a result, also by incorporating, by giving more wattage on income criterion. So as a result, actually it will not actually matter so much. So because it will encourage the states, the poor states to perform actually better in terms of fiscal decentralization. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other? Yes. Please announce your name, and if you have a question, please mention to whom it is addressed. Is it to the presentation made by Professor Parmeshwaran or to Pinaki or to any of the other panelists?
Myself, Justin George, and my question is for in general, and maybe a question to myself. The concern is really, as Dr. Parameshwaran said in the beginning, that the disparity is widening. I would rather call it as a polarization. Each state is actually widening each other. For example, there is a difference between the North India and the South Indian state. Even in the South Indian state, Kerala is very unique. So the real concern is how a single equation of FC, the Finance Commission, especially with regard to the vertical transfer, will solve this kind of vertical issue. And I think it is also very difficult to argue, especially for a vertical transfer, how we can forgive, how we can away from the equity concern. That is very difficult to argue from a normative perspective. I think rather going for that, I think we should discuss more on the special package. And if so, what should be the criteria for that? I think we have to discuss on that. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm Emmanuel Thomas. Sir, I think it will be a good idea to encourage the 16th Finance Commission to encourage the central government to publish to make the data on cess and surcharges easily accessible, as the earlier Finance Commission succeeded in the case of off-budget borrowing of the central government. Notwithstanding the point raised by Professor Pinaki about the end use of this cesses and surcharge revenue, I think that will be good. That will be good for the good in national interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Either of you want to pick up any of the comments, questions? Actually, they were really observations, not so much comments. So with that, by the way, Professor Hariharan, I'm not going to make any long comments. I was supposed to make some closing remarks, but I think we've had enough. There's also a sort of attention span limitation. So I'm not going to say very much, except that for me, three important takeaways from the discussion. There are lots, but just to make three quick points. One is that I think increasingly is being felt that you need some kind of a permanence of this institution of the Finance Commission. Individual member commissions can change, just like you have the Planning Commission, they will go new, but the institution of Finance Commission, as you had with Planning, should continue with Secretariat and so on, particularly with the view to seeing how it's recommended one commission is being implemented, are there distortions, etc., etc. The other point I think virtually most speakers talked about is the malfunctioning of the centrally sponsored schemes, and something needs to be done about it. I thought Senthil had a very good suggestion that if you have to have it, then you give 100%. That is what you're interested in. And this is because it makes very little justification that you first give it and then make the states bear an increasing share of that cost. Of course, if you were to do away with centrally sponsored schemes altogether, even within the roughly 50% cap that Pinaki has been talking about, then you can raise the devolution component, it is untied and so on. So without impacting the overall distribution of resources between center and states, you can still give states more elbow room by getting away from this very unpopular, as everybody has said, institutional centrally sponsored schemes. Yeah, and finally, I think number of persons mentioned this, that we do need, given the way things are going, some coordination among at least some of the states themselves to start monitoring how the center is performing. Can't just leave it to the center to monitor the states, but do it the reverse. And if they do it collectively and it comes into several state memoranda, I think it may begin to have an impact in deliberations of the commission, of the 16th Finance Commission. So with that, let me leave it there and it's for you to now make the closing remarks. I mean, final remarks. And then we will disperse for lunch.
So thank you so much. I think it was a very productive and useful discussion. We got a lot of food for thought, and we are now planning to put it all together and then create a document, and which would be then later presented before the Finance Commission. So your inputs would be required again in this process. So we'll get in touch with you, in the due course. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for.
Thank you. So we now conclude the meeting.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Lekha.